I would say that the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks last year did not necessarily have much better than that.
Do you think the Cardinals could get through this version of the National League?
I would say that the hitters need to hit.
That was Eno Saris last week on with us. Eno's one of the best in the business when it comes to breaking down pitching across Major League Baseball. Always appreciate him joining our show. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, as I was going through earlier today, we were reading a piece from St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the website earlier this morning, and they broke down how the veterans have just really been able to stabilize this roster for the Cardinals in 2024. And a big part of that is the rotation, right? The rotation being what it is this year. And when I think through things, just in my mind, the rotation's been a lot better this year. Now, that's not numbers-based, that's vibes-based. When I'm watching the games...
Well, last year was a disaster, so...
I'm consuming the sport of baseball here in St. Louis. I'm having a much better time this year than I did last year. And I feel better, kind of like our circle of trust. I feel better watching the starters this season than I did going into basically every start last year that wasn't made by Jordan Montgomery. And so to me, that's a significant improvement. But in this article, they broke it down, and it basically said, hey, the rotation has been slightly better than it was at this point last year. And that shocked me as I read that. So I wanted to dive into some more of the numbers, some of the baseline numbers, and also underlying stuff. It's the stuff under the hood that suggests, hey, is this sustainable? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Where are we at right now? So I wanted to ask you, T-Bone, and you, Alex, and 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, the YouTube chat, the graveyard chat over there at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. Has the starting pitching actually improved enough to make up for what has actually declined offensively for the Cardinals this year compared to this point last season? So I'm going to give you these numbers, Alex. In 2024, the St. Louis Cardinals starters have thrown 512 innings with a 4.44 ERA. At this point a year ago, the Cardinals rotation had thrown 503 innings, so 9 fewer innings, with a 4.7 ERA. So you're at a 4.44 this year, you were at a 4.7 last year, and you've basically thrown the same number of innings. Now, some of the underlying stuff is a lot better this year. If you look at the fielding independent pitching this year compared to last year, like 0.2 better. If you look at the batting average against, it's 254 this year. It was 284 last year. If you look at the whip, walks and hits per innings pitched, 1.3 this year, 1.5 last year. You're better pitching-wise this year than you were a year ago. Is it better enough to make up for that, terrible year that was a year ago?
To make up for last year?
Is it better enough to be a contender this year?
No, it's not. Because, yes, you're better than last year, but last year was awful, and I don't think that was that hard to be better than last year. And they made the right moves to bring in the right pieces, but you've improved, which is the reason why this team is, 4.5 games behind the Brewers for the Central Division crown, and they have a realistic shot to chase them. But your starting pitching has not proved enough to be a contender. Because every single game we continue, and whether the pitching has been improved or not, the outcomes of the game have almost been the same every single night. Starting pitching is going to give up 3 or 4 runs. The offense is going to stay within striking distance, and either they're going to have the lead or they're going to be behind 1, and then you win the game in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning. The Cardinals have yet to feel like they are winning games in the 3rd or 4th inning because either the pitching implodes later on or your offense doesn't score enough runs. So your rotation has improved. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But if you're asking me if they've improved enough to be a contender, there's no way. Because you have one guy that I trust going into a playoff series. And the second half, I am very concerned for 4/5 of your rotation.
Yeah, that's where I am. I think when you look at what the rotation is and you get the good vibes, which I kind of agree with, I think it's the same conversation we had in the offseason. Did you improve your rotation? Yeah. But was it high enough compared to last year was the worst possible outcome ever? No, you did the bare minimum to improve it. I think this is a regular season rotation. And I think we've had this conversation on the show is what you mentioned. These guys keep you in these games, which you need in the regular season. They don't provide the stuff, though, that's needed when you get to October. And that's where I would say, is this a contending rotation? No. Is it better than last year? Yeah, it probably gets you into the playoffs with it, but it also probably ends up where you're not going to be getting very far once you get to October with this caliber of a rotation.
I don't think it's better enough. Not to get through October. I think your rotation can actually get you to the postseason.
I agree.
Like, as currently constructed, if they went into the second half and Andre Palante is this version of Andre Palante, if he's going to legitimately be a top 5 starter on basically any team in Major League Baseball, and that's what he's been since reemerging as a starter for the Cardinals, I think he'd be fine. You could make it to the playoffs. I don't know that this gets you through October. That's the difference. And so, like, is it better enough to accomplish the goal that they stated out? We talked to Michael Gersh preseason about, hey, what was your goal when you got these guys? And he said, we got to fill starts, man. We don't have the depth that other teams have to be able to put guys on the IL and have like a second rotation on the injured list. We need players that are going to go out there and start 30 games for us this year. They've accomplished that goal. Kyle Gibson has been that. Lance Lynn has been that. Miles Michaelis, for all the warts that are there, has been a guy that is in your rotation every time you need him, every 5th day.
Great for the most part, been that.
Absolutely. Other than the weird start to the season, hamstring injury, he's done his job. What they haven't improved enough is the quality of those innings. And so if you go to the deadline this year and opt against trading for a starter, I think you will regret it when you get to the postseason. That's where I think it really comes back to bite you. But for the second half, I think they've got enough internally to be able to make this work. So that's where I wanted to get to next. The Cardinals have been, historically speaking, a second half team. I remember a few years ago, Alex, Tyler O'Neill said this, and we all laughed at the time that he said it. And then it came true, and they went on some miraculous run. Here's what he had to say about the Cardinals being a second half team.
It just kind of feels like there's, I don't know, there's just a little less stress around the clubhouse, if that makes sense lately. So it just feels like everyone's playing a little looser. Good vibes in there, good chemistry. It's fun to be a part of. So I'm just looking forward to getting in here and playing my part. Hopefully we got big steps ahead.
Anybody else miss the going back to back with the boys?
I did too.
Man,
100%.
God, I miss that, bro.
O'Neill. Cardinals
deep
missed
voice
it,
of O'Neill.
I'd love to go back to back.
Do the Cardinals have it in them to be a second half team again this year? Because when they've been good, they typically emerge as like, whoa, what, 17 games in a row in 2021?
We all fall in love. We're like, we're
Albert
going deep in
Pujols in
October.
2022. Like, you remember what it looks like when this team gets going. Mike Schilt, night 2019. Like, the last 3 times this team has made it to the postseason, they've had some crazy run to be able to get there, and it's mostly taken place in the second half of the season. They have not been all that much better in the first half of the season than what they were this year. This is one of their best first halves in the last decade, Alex. It feels crazy to say that, but like since 2015 when they were amazing. One of the best best first halves the Cardinals have had is right now, this season. Do they have it in them, though, to have the second half run that they've typically had when they've been a good playoff team?
I don't think so.
A good team that makes the playoffs.
I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't think we're going to be talking about this team going on a torrid run in the second half like they did in years past. I think you're probably going to be talking about the same team that does the same thing in the second half as they did in the first half, and here's why. Because when you went on those torrid runs with teams in the second half and made the playoffs, your foundation was already in place performing well. You already had the big bats in the lineup for you. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. Those guys were constant. What you needed complementary pieces to carry you into that second half and come up big for you. The complementary pieces have carried you in the first half. And I don't see any of those guys doing what Goldschmidt and Arenado did in those seasons to the point that they take over that role this season. It comes down to Goldschmidt and Arenado. If you want to be a team that could go on a 17-game win streak or just run away with the second half in the National League Central Division this year, you're going to have Goldschmidt and Arenado doing what they are known to do and the complementary pieces keeping up what they're doing. That's what's really going to carry this team because you're going to be relying on that bullpen to carry you if they don't, which you've just had to do that for 2.5 months. Your rotation you're going to have to rely upon. And a lot of those guys I'm worried are going the opposite direction in the second half. And it comes back to offense. And I don't think if you have Goldschmidt and Arenado, you're going to be able to repeat that.
Yeah, I don't think they can go on a surge in the second half. I do think they can play kind of like they did in the first half, play like 3 games, 4 games above 500. But I don't see a surge to where you can potentially close in on the Brewers and maybe even take the NL Central from them. I get they're not that far behind, but I think it would take a surge. And the reason is because of what Alex said. I just don't know if you've got the offense to do it. And maybe the only reason I think of this from 21 and 22 is because offense is sexy, and I dig the long ball.
Tyler O'Neill was amazing MVP
Unbelievable.
campaign in 2021. Albert Pujols basically
hot in
MVP
22.
campaign in the second half of 2022.
And they had good pitching in those years. Like they had Montgomery and Quintana
Defense
that were
was
great.
unbelievable. Defense was the theme of 2019, 2021, and 2022.
Yeah. So the defense they have,
Agreed.
the rotation
get
they
better.
could have.
Like if Tommy Edman comes back and he's what they think he can be, he could be the type of improvement defensively that they've had in those other seasons.
Second half of Paul Goldschmidt in 2021, which, if I'm not mistaken, that was the 17-game win streak.
Yeah.
Paul Goldschmidt hit 330 with a 618 slugging percentage and a over 1,000 OPS in the second half. 18 home runs and 50 RBIs.
I'm not counting on that.
Albert Pujols'
coming up.
numbers from 2022.
Unbelievable.
It's still loading because Baseball Reference, is so fast these days.
That's the reason I don't believe they can go on a surge. It's because I just don't think they've got the offense to do it.
Albert Pujols in 2022. I'm going to give you a number. You tell me if this is batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, or OPS.
Oh, I love this game.
715.
Slug.
Batting average.
Slug. He had an 1,100 OPS in the second half in 2022. He ended up with 180 plate appearances in the second half, an OPS of 1,100. 18 home runs in 56 games.
Unbelievable.
If they have something like that, if somebody emerges and it's like, whoa, in the next 55 games, they're going to be that. They can have a second half like what we've remembered.
Nolan Arenado, second half of 2022. 292 batting average, 544 slug, 900 OPS.
Yeah, they need that.
Yeah.
They need one of Goldie or Arenado or Gorman. Gorman could be this guy too.
Yeah.
One of those three, if they get hot like that and they have the ability to carry your offense out. Nootbaar has had moments like this. In his career, he has been a much better, and I can't explain it, he can't explain it, a much better second half player than he has been in the first half. It's like he like regroups at the All-Star break, goes and trains for a week, and comes back and like,
peak
did
Lars.
you just become peak Lars again? Like, where did this come from? So one of those guys, probably honestly two of those guys, need to emerge and be the players that we expected them to be coming into the season. And if that happens, you can have the offense that makes up for some of these pitching deficiencies that we've been talking about. But that's what it would require for them to be a second half team. And I just don't have the confidence in any of those players individually right now to believe that it's actually going to happen. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, Mizzou Athletic Director Laird Veatch is going to join us coming up at 11:35. Looking forward to talking to the relatively recently named Mizzou Athletic Director. We'll talk to him about what this football season means for Missouri, what he's anticipating in terms of the future of the SEC scheduling, and what the college football playoff, the expansion, means for a program like the University of Missouri. We'll get into all that so much more with Laird Veatch at 11:35. Mike Ferrin of MLB Network joins us at 12 o'clock. But coming up next, Alex, it's list season in the NHL, and that means the Athletic is putting out their best and worst contracts of the NHL right now. The Blues do have a player that was listed among the worst contracts in the league right now. It's probably not who you think it is. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so Alex's favorite guy, Dom, from The Athletic, put together a list of the 10 worst contracts in the NHL.
This is really why the offseason sucks. It's just Dom comes out with his lists every day.
This is our annual tradition here on the show. I think every year that we've seen these lists come out, the Blues have had at least one player on the list of the worst contracts in
Dom
the NHL.
hates St. Louis.
And this is based upon, what they did a year ago, their age, the projection of what they're going to be. He's got this model that people either love or hate. There's really no in between. And he's projecting, based upon their current contracts, salary and term, what the worst contracts in the league are right now. So, for example, number 1, Jonathan Huberdeau. $10.5 million per year. He's got 7 years remaining on his deal.
Yeah.
It's a rough one for the Calgary Flames. There's no getting around that.
Yeah.
A new addition to this list was a free agent signing from this offseason that the Blues were reportedly interested in the player.
This should be number 1, Chandler Stevenson.
30-year-old center making $6.5 million per year for the next 7 years. His model has him worth $2.5 million per year over a 7-year contract.
They signed him solely from, he won a Stanley Cup with Vegas, and we need a centerman, so let's go get him.
Number 3 on the list, Tom Wilson of the Washington Capitals.
I would have thought Darnell Nurse would have been 3rd.
He is on this list, but it's lower on the list, I believe.
Tom Wilson, I guess because he's going to age, makes sense, but I would take him at his contract right now.
Yeah, number 9 is Darnell Nurse. Number 8, by the way, remember when Seth Jones was a big signing by the Chicago Blackhawks? That has not aged well.
That offseason went poorly. They traded for Fleury, and he was out the door at the deadline, and they got Jones and signed him.
If Colton Parayko is on this damn list, and Seth Jones, who's making $9.5 million to be a subpar top 4 defenseman, I might lose my damn mind.
All right, at number 4 on this list is a St. Louis Blue. Alex, who would you guess is the Blues player on Dom's list of the 10 worst contracts heading into 2024 in the NHL?
My guess, Braden Shen.
Okay. Braden Shen has $6.5 million. I think 4 years remaining, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because
on that deal.
for some reason, his numbers love Torrey Krug. And they also are fine with Justin Falk. The only other 2 guys that I can think of would be Jordan Binnington and Colton Parayko. And if Binnington's on this list, I might drop an F-bomb on this show.
All right, you ready?
Let me load our
drum roll, please.
I'm going to press my dump button.
According to Dom from The Athletic, the fourth worst contract in the NHL heading into 2024 is 31-year-old Blues defenseman Colton Parayko.
You gotta be freaking kidding me.
$6.5 million, 6 years remaining. He says he is worth $2.5 million per year over a 6-year contract.
Oh my God! What? $2.5 million for that guy. He went up against the top lines all season.
He has no offense.
Who freaking cares?
The NHL as a whole.
$2.5 million is what you're telling me. And Darnell Nurse is making $9.5.
Well, he said he's also a top 10 worst contracts in the NHL.
What did he say Darnell Nurse deserved?
In terms of his actual contract, what does he deserve? Let's take a look.
It's 2.5.
He says that, by the way, Seth Jones is worth $6 per year.
Dude. Everybody should be
6 years.
Everybody should tweet Dom and let him know that model he uses is complete trash.
So let me read you his explanation.
I don't even want to hear it.
Here's the thing on Colton Parayko. He's still very good defensively in a shutdown role that holds a lot of value. He makes key stops for the Blues and eats tough minutes, both things that the model holds in high regard and gives him a strong defensive rating. There's a lot of value in what Parayko brings to the table, and there's something to be said about not being in the best environment to succeed with the Blues as well. But what Parayko lacks is what separates him from true top pair defensemen you see among playoff teams, and that puts him well below his current cap hit. Maybe calling him a $4 million or less defenseman is harsh, sure, but the bigger problem is that he's 31 and has 6 years left at his current price tag.
So that's our biggest knock on Colton Parayko, that he doesn't put up points. Basically. And that's what makes him a $2.5 million defenseman.
Yeah. Over a 6-year contract.
Because of points.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that you would much rather have an Erik Karlsson, who might put up 75 points for you this season, but legit when he is on the ice is a liability every single night. You'd rather pay that.
Based upon the fact that Carlson is not named in the top 10 worst contracts in the NHL, I would say that's probably accurate.
Okay, I'm not asking Dom anymore in his stupid model. I'm asking you. You're telling me you would much rather have an Erik Karlsson who is a liability on the ice when the puck comes into his zone because he might put up 75 points this season.
You know my answer to that, and you know I would not want to have that.
I think I would. You know,
You want me to slash your tires today.
Gotta score goals to win.
He compared the Colton Parayko contract to Mark-Edouard Vlasic.
Such a stupid
Said that's
list.
how it could age for the
Such a
Blues.
stupid list. You call up every single general manager in the National Hockey League and offer up Colton Parayko, they'll say, cool, who do you want?
So I think we have just gotten to a place with analytics. And you guys know, if you listen to this show for any amount of time, you know I'm not somebody that is like, bash analytics, bash the numbers at all costs. That's not me. However, in the NHL, and I think in general, there are certain things that are just blinded by analytics. Hell, I say this about baseball too. I think defensive numbers are so far undervalued. With baseball numbers, it's really hard to quantify, and I think you see different models try to quantify it in different ways. Like some of them, either defensive runs saved or outs above average. I always forget which one it is. But one of them takes into account where a player starts. And so, like, positioning matters in that, and the other one does not. The other one is all about range. And so if you're actually positioned poorly and you get a good jump on a ball in one of those metrics for baseball, you get, like, a boost. Should that actually be a boost or not? I don't know, but that's the way that the model works for those numbers. In the NHL, I think we have actually undervalued what a defensive-minded defenseman can bring to the table. Now, I don't know how you quantify that. It's really hard. I think there are certain things that Colton Parayko does that do not show up in a number system like this. Like I was talking about this with Jamie, and I know they're going to talk about it later on the Fast Lane, and he was saying how Parayko's really good at deterring players from coming to his side when they're on a breakaway, right? If you've got a Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon, and they're getting ready to head into the offensive zone, which side are they going to go down? Well, they've got two choices. Go against Colton Parayko or go against Nick Leddy. They're probably going to go up against Nick Leddy. So that's the kind of thing that is really hard to track in a situation like this, and it's why I think he gets underrated in these kinds of metrics.
The one thing that affects him is, of course, the power play time, because Brock Faber, I just looked at this, and I know we got to go because we got Laird Veatch on the other line waiting for us, but Brock Faber, who I think a lot of people view as a top-pair defenseman, played around the same amount of time averaging per game as Colton Parayko. He had 20 more points, but he played number one power play minutes. If Parayko's on the number one power play, he's viewed as a top-pair defenseman.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Laird Veatch, Mizzou Athletic Director, joins us next year on 101 ESPN. Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers were at Media Day earlier this week. Laird Veatch, the Missouri Athletic Director, joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. It's our first opportunity to talk to Laird Veatch, and we sincerely appreciate him giving us a little bit of time today. Laird, thanks so much. Congratulations, a belated congratulations on getting back to the University of Missouri in the great city of Columbia. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you. So what has the first little bit of time been like for you to get back into Columbia and kind of settle in with your family?
It's been a lot of fun. I don't know if we're really settled in yet. We just moved into the house this last weekend. So,
nice.
Of course, these transitions, you tend to just jump in and go work for a couple months. But it's nice to get the family back. And, it's been a lot of making the rounds around the state and meeting a lot of folks. It's been awesome to be back. A lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones, and just really enjoying the time getting established.
So, Laird, what's the anticipation like for you? Because you come in, of course, in the middle of the summer season, and when things get ramped up, I would imagine you're kind of anticipating this like most fans are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very fortunate to walk in when there's so much, momentum and energy and excitement around the program, and, heading into what looks to be a very special football season. And really, a lot of our sports are looking up. Obviously you've seen the recruiting class that Coach Gage has put together for men's basketball, and, many of our other sports are doing really well. So it's going to be a great year. A lot of fun.
Laird Veatch is our guest here on 101 ESPN. Laird, for people that aren't familiar with your background, you spent a lot of time at the University of Missouri, late 90s all the way to the mid-2010s. You were around that Mizzou Chase Daniel era. You got to see up close in person what that was like for Mizzou fans, the anticipation that built, especially leading into 2008, for example, after that 2007 season. Does this time remind you of that era? And if not, what are some of the biggest differences that you're noticing?
It does remind me in many respects that same kind of energy, enthusiasm about what's going on. In some respects, though, this feels like it could be even bigger. And partly, I think just being in the SEC and competing at this level in the SEC makes it a bigger stage. You're sort of automatically then elevated if you're competing at this high level in this conference, then you're elevated nationally, even more so. So, it feels like the opportunity is potentially even more significant, and I think we have an opportunity to really create a sustainable program long term. In part because of what Coach Drink is building, and you've seen his recruiting success recently. So. It's exciting and has a lot of implications.
Well, and a lot of people, Laird, have been talking about the expansion with college football, talking about more teams going into the playoffs and kind of merging a lot of teams into different conferences. What's that expansion impact like for a team for Mizzou?
Well, it just gets you, an added level of, sort of hope and access to the postseason. When you have. When you're limited to, what's been the four teams in the past, the reality of making that is just harder to see, right? It's just harder to look at and see on the surface. Whereas you look at it for a team like us this year, it looks like a realistic objective, even for us optimistic, fans and supporters of the program. You can look at that and see, hey, there's a real path there. And be honest with yourself, in this process. And so that creates a level of, anticipation for all of us that's exciting. I mean, you think about the potential opportunity to, possibly host a playoff game in Columbia, Missouri, and the impact that it would have on, our university, city, state, the overall impact of that is dramatic. And it's a realistic objective that we have a chance to achieve.
Laird, I know you guys have been doing some work on the stadium during the offseason. Do you have any update on what fans can expect from that once the gates are open for opening night on Thursday, August 29th against Murray State?
Yeah, I don't think we'll see much, if any, real impact, particularly early on in the season from a construction standpoint related to that project. I mean, we are looking at from the beginning. The objective has been to break ground right after this season, and we may be doing some work even later in the season before that final home game, but it's really going to be more after this season and then through the following season, with the goal to complete by the 26th season.
Do you have any changes that you plan to be making, whether it's you or just people in your department, in terms of the game day experience for fans this year? Will they notice anything different at Ferrario from what they've had in the past?
I don't think you'll see a lot of differences. I know we are working on some tweaks and added experiences. I don't think there'll be anything dramatic that you'll see, although I have heard really good things about the progress that's happened in the last couple of years with the efforts from a game experience, fan experience standpoint. So, for me, I need to get in there and sort of observe it firsthand and see before I, make any, significant improvements or adjustments. But I am excited to see it and hear it because I've heard really good things about the progress and certainly when you have a full stadium that's the number one thing. So that's what's going to be awesome is we're going to be in a situation where our goal is to sell it out for the year, and it's single game tickets are going to go on sale real soon. So when that happens and games start to sell out and that scarcity really starts to set in, that also adds to a level of, excitement and energy in the stadium that you just can't really get otherwise.
Laird, one thing I'm curious about, when you were at Memphis in the same role, that was when NIL really got initiated into college football and just college athletics in general. What has it been like as an athletic director kind of navigating those waters?
Well, as you can imagine, it's been challenging in many respects. In some ways, it's exciting because it's new and it's different, and you have to be willing to think outside the box and be aggressive and not sort of be conformed to how things have always been. But it's certainly been a challenge as well, and it makes it what may be the most difficult part about it is it demands so much time and thought and energy that you're not able to spend the time on the other things that you want to as much, right? On specific relationships or just kind of the fundamentals of what we do. So it has been, unquestionably a challenge that's required a lot of bandwidth from a lot of administrators and coaches. I mean, you see coaches really on the front line of managing NIL and securing NIL support and really using that as an opportunity to move your programs forward. So it's been an interesting time, to say the least.
Laird Veatch is our guest here on 101 ESPN for just another couple of minutes. Missouri's athletic director. Laird, there was a report earlier today that came out about what the revenue sharing model could look like. And I know this is still off into the distance a bit, and there are questions from everybody as to what this is going to be, how it's going to be implemented, et cetera. But as an athletic director, when this is probably on the horizon at some point in the not too distant future, how do you prepare for something like that is going to affect your athletic department so greatly, but has so much uncertainty associated with it?
Well, you put it well. I mean, the way we're approaching this, and I think really, most athletic directors, presidents, others around the country sort of have to think about it this way, is you really have to go through this next year sort of modeling all kinds of different options and really being willing to step back and think about the college athletics model, if you will, how we've operated very differently. And so it's going to take a significant amount of time and thought, consideration from folks in our department and others that we're going to have to bring in to think about it and look at how we're operating and being willing to consider things differently. And so, you're going to be modeling it, looking at it, and trying to analyze it at different angles, whether that's our financial model, our operational model, how we're securing revenues, everything to position yourself to manage that the best you can, and in a way that, it gives you an advantage, hopefully, from a competitive standpoint. So it's going to be quite the process, but in some ways I've used the analogy of going through COVID and how we you'd plan and you'd model and you'd think about things, and then you'd sort of wait to see what the next step was or what happened, and then you'd finally wait to pull the trigger on a new process or a strategy that you've decided to implement. And it's going to be that many ways that same thing. You're going to have to be ready, think through it, and then as soon as you get real clarity, then you push go on whatever model makes the most sense at that point.
Laird, final question that I've got for you, and we appreciate the time today. Missouri Athletic Director Laird Veatch is our guest here on 101 ESPN, and as he mentioned, single game tickets coming up soon at the Missouri Tigers website. You can check out over there. You can also fill out a form if you're interested in season-long tickets. Laird, when you think about what the Missouri Tigers have this year offensively, you've got Brady Cook, you've got Luther Burden. Those are two names that are prominent, not just in the SEC now, but nationally. And you've got a very good team coming back that, as you mentioned earlier, has realistic expectations of a college football playoff. Do you and your athletic department have plans to put together some kind of campaigns for end-of-season awards? I know that's something that we've seen at times from teams in the past, and the legwork on that kind of starts pretty early on. Is that something you guys are preparing for right now?
I know there's been conversation of that with our staff. I have not had a chance to really dig into that with them in terms of what that looks like in detail. I know that is on the radar and something that we'll be prepared to take advantage of and move forward with as we move through the season. But to this point, after my first couple of months, that's just the detail I haven't quite got to. But that'd be an awesome opportunity, and I'm sure. Those players get out there and earn those types of potential awards. We're going to be positioned to take advantage of it for them.
As a follow-up on that, Laird, and I promise we'll get you out of here on this. After 2007, I believe that was the biggest incoming freshman class that Missouri has ever had in 2008, and it was kind of in part because of the notoriety that the university got from the 2007 football team. What kind of an impact could a great season have from Missouri football for the university this year?
Well, it's really, really important and could have an impact not only just in terms of the excitement for this year, but I think it gives you a chance to establish something that's really sustainable over a period. And, for us to realize the benefits of a highly successful football program, it can't just be a year or two, right? It's got to be a decade. It's got to stretch out over a period of time. And if you do that, then it can have incredibly impactful, long-lasting impact, not just for, again, selling out football stadiums, but on your institution, on enrollment, on, fundraising and the overall economy. I mean, it is a drastic impact, maybe even more so than it should be in the big scheme of things. But that's what I believe can happen if we continue to have build on the kind of success we had last year, because that momentum and those things continue to build on it. So you get another great recruiting class, and then you have another year, and then it increases your likelihood year after year to have more say. Even though you have to start over, you have to compete every year. You're building a program and trying to put some things in place that just haven't been able to happen here for a while. So. Super excited about it. It's a great opportunity. I'm going to do every bit my part to help Coach Drink and the staff and players to make those things happen.
Hey, Laird, we appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today. We look forward to catching up with you as we get closer to the college football season. All the best to you and your staff, and good luck with all the moving in. It's a less than ideal situation to have.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. MIZ.
That's Laird Veatch joining us here on 101 ESPN ZOU.
Say, come on, man. Just set it up for you there.
I got to make sure that I get that in for my guy.
No,
all right.
The more important thing is the ZOU. Come on.
Touche. Laird Veatch is the new Missouri Athletic Director. He is, when Missouri's AD position came open, the first name that me and every other person that has spent more than 5 minutes covering the University of Missouri said was Laird Veatch is probably going to be the first name you call. And then they took 2 months to decide who they wanted to go out there and hire. And they came back and said, hey, Laird Veatch is our next athletic director. It was a smart hire. It was a good hire. He understands the University of Missouri. I think he's going to do a really good job there. It's also a really hard position to be put into right now because when you think about, hey, what is the impact of an athletic director at a university? Right now, NIL is huge, but Missouri already has a really good system going with NIL. People, Alex, across the country are saying, how do we get the Missouri model of NIL? Which is not something that I would have ever expected to be able to say, but that's where we're at. 2, the football coach. Well, Missouri has a pretty good one going right now, so just don't screw that up, and you're in a good position if you're Laird Veatch. 3, the basketball program. And do you have the right coach in place? We'll see on that. I like Dennis Gates. He did a really great job in year 1, and then year 2 was a disaster. Got a really good recruiting class. We'll see what happens there. But it's hard for a new athletic director at a place like Mizzou to immediately stamp what they're going to be in this kind of an uncertain time for NIL and what the revenue sharing looks like, along with what the current situation is for all the programs. But dude, you can't come into a better time when it comes to anticipation, because this is about as excited as I've been for a Mizzou season literally since 2008. Yeah. It's been 16 years since I've been this excited about a Missouri football team.
Yeah, well, and that's the part I find so interesting is, I mean, you got a guy who, at least off of his profile, I mean, he was with Memphis when NIL really kicked in around college sports. And so, like, you got somebody who can navigate that with those waters. That's never an easy thing to do, to take over such a program that is going to be in high status for the next couple of years once the revenue sharing really kicks in. But you've got a guy who's stepping into a role when it's so exciting, and you figure out how to navigate those waters as you go. The part that I'm most interested in, I didn't get the chance to ask him, is just the relationship with Eli Drinkowitz, who's already established, and kind of how you build that relationship as an athletic director when it's already in place. But you'll see that grow, obviously, as this program continues to grow.
Yeah, I can't wait, dude. I cannot wait for this college football season. It's going to be amazing. I think this Tigers team is going to be really good, and I think early on, I asked him about the campaign that they could potentially do. I bet you within the first month, you'll see campaigns that start for Luther Burden to win the Heisman. Missouri will have stuff like that going on behind the scenes. It's just going to be a matter of what that looks like. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line. We had to cut our conversation short on Colton Parayko and where he ranks among the worst contracts in the NHL. Alex certainly pushed back against that. He's got some more thoughts on that. We'll get to some of your questions next year on 101 ESPN.
Terrence here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Earlier today, St. Louis City SC traded Sam Adeniran to the Philadelphia Union for some GAM allocation money. And if you just missed our interview with Missouri Athletic Director Laird Veatch, you can check it out on our podcast page after the show today at 101ESPN.com or via the free 101 ESPN app. Cardinals off today, and then they'll be back in action as they start the second half tomorrow when they start a 3-game set versus at the Atlanta Braves. 6:20 will be first pitch. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. But first, Alex, I do want to follow up on our conversation that we had at 11:15. If you missed our conversation with Laird Veatch, check that out on the podcast page.
Yeah, I don't want to waste too much time because I think we're all in agreement that Dom's models are stupid and we really shouldn't get angry.
Our conversation at 11:15 was about the worst contracts in the NHL. Dom from The Athletic put together his top 10 list. At number 4, once again, was Colton Parayko, Blues defenseman.
Yeah, so the main reason why it's frustrating when you look at it and to say that, like, well, he's not valuable is because we're going off of offense. Because according to Dom's metric and what he's using this with, Torrey Krug is more valuable his contract than Colton Parayko because he puts up points. And I just don't buy into that conversation. I looked at this in terms of even strength. Colton Parayko last year played the 5th most minutes among all defensemen in the National Hockey League. And if you're going even strength goals for in terms of him being on the ice for goals scored at even strength, he was 37th amongst all defensemen in the National Hockey League. So even if he's not putting up points at even strength, when he's on the ice, his team is also scoring points. And the part that really is frustrating is because this is all generated off of him not getting power play time. If Colton Parayko is playing power play, you're probably talking about an extra 12 to 15 points, and I'm being reserved on that sense of it, talking with assists and maybe a couple of goals. Colton Parayko last season put up 26 points in 82 games and was a +4. Brock Faber, who averaged the same amount of ice time as Colton Parayko last season with Minnesota, who is viewed as a #1 elite defenseman, had a total of 16 points on the power play. And if you take those 16 points away on the power play, he put up 23 points last season and was a he put up 29 points and was a -1 last season. Colton Parayko had 26 points and was a +4, playing some of the toughest minutes at even strength against some of the best lines in the National Hockey League. It's just a trash model for me. And to sit there and say he's only worth $2.5 million, that's also trash.
All right, from the 618, guys, would you trade Brendan Donovan straight up for Logan Gilbert?
Hell yeah. I know we love Donnie, but guys, Logan Gilbert is a beast right now.
Yeah, if the Mariners were dumb enough to do that, I'd do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. I mean, it's not enough to get it done. Would I like to have Logan Gilbert? Absolutely. Would I want to trade Brendan Donovan? Nope. Would I do it for Logan Gilbert straight up? You bet it. You betcha. He's got a 2.8 ERA so far this season, and he leads all of Major League Baseball in innings pitched.
He's so good.
He is, like, in some ways, I don't know that he's as good as this guy that I'm about to mention, but if he adds a little bit more in terms of his strikeout rate, he's got some Zach Wheeler potential. He could be that kind. Yeah, he's got that kind of potential to him. Again, it would require him to add a little bit more strikeout stuff, but Zach Wheeler also had to wait a little while into his career to add the kind of strikeout stuff that we've seen from him in Philadelphia. So, yeah, I would make that move. That would be the guy that I would be targeting, but I don't think Seattle is going to trade him. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 314. Guys, who would be a better cleanup hitter for the Cardinals? Wilson Contreras or Alec Burleson?
I would say Wilson Contreras because of the ability to hit home runs and to hit for power with guys on base. I would much rather have Wilson in that spot.
I think Wilson as well, but a lot of that is because I would rather have Alec Burleson batting second. I like where they have Alec Burleson batting right now. I do think they should have conversations about what happens around him. Like, I think you could have a conversation about putting Donovan back up in the leadoff spot against right-handed pitching.
I like Wynn, though, in that spot.
Problem
I like him, but his
wins-
production has started to decline, and Brendan Donovan's production has really started to spike again. I want my best hitters getting the most at-bats possible, and so if that means Donovan 1, I don't know what you would do 2. That's where things get really difficult, but right-handed hitter X 2, Burleson 3, Contreras 4. That's probably the best quote-unquote lineup construction. You could even go Donovan, Contreras, Burleson if you really wanted to.
Yeah, but then you're really lacking in the 4 spot. It just comes to show they're missing a right-handed bat, a productive right-handed bat. I wouldn't mind even if like Nootbaar plays well in the second half. I know Ollie doesn't like to do this, but I'd go back to the classic Donnie 1, Nootbaar 2, Contreras 3, Burley 4. Something like that. But then you've got a left-handed lane there for lefties.
You could also do, I mean, if you wanted to put him 4, you could do something like Win 1, Donnie 2, Contreras 3, Burleson 4.
That's probably what I would do right now.
That could make some sense.
Just because Wynn, even though he is starting to cool off, the production is still there. So I want him near the top of the lineup. He provides a spark. Donovan will get on base at the 2 spot, and then you got 2 guys on with some decent Wynn with decent speed for Burley and Contreras.
I could see that. That's probably your best construction right now. So that way you avoid the left spot in your lineup.
Alternate him. Yeah.
Because you're never going to pinch hit for any of those guys. So you kind of do have to be cognizant of righty-lefty. I think they focus too much on that sometimes in the bottom half of the order. Teams do, not necessarily the Cardinals. But teams focus too much on that in the bottom half of the order because you could platoon there late in innings. Top of your lineup, you're probably not platooning there either way. So you do kind of have to think about that a little bit. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk to Mike Ferrin, baseball analyst for MLB Network Radio. Always love talking to him around this time of the year. He's got a better scope on the wide range of what's taking place in Major League Baseball than sometimes we do here locally. So I want to talk to him about that and get his thoughts on where the Cardinals stand as we are about 2 weeks away from this year's trade deadline. Mike Ferrin joins us next year on 101 ESPN. It's always a pleasure to be able to catch up with Mike Ferrin. He's a baseball analyst for MLB Network Radio. You can follow him on Twitter at his name, Mike_Ferrin, Ferrin. He joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. Mike, as you can imagine, we've been talking a lot about the Cardinals and how they can improve this team in recent days and weeks, but want to start out with kind of a more open-ended question for you. Cardinals are 50-46 at this year's All-Star break. How would you assess what we saw from them in the first half of the season?
I would say surprisingly good. I mean, especially when you consider how much they've been outscored by on the season. I'm not sure that any of us really could have come into the year really. I know some of the statistical projections were higher on the Cardinals than a lot of us were, but it just didn't feel like there was enough there. So the fact that they have, won 50 games at the All-Star break, the 4 games over 500, I think is certainly great news for them. I mean, it's a better position than I think most of us anticipated them being in. They're clinging to one of the wild card spots, so they're within shouting distance of Milwaukee, like basically everybody else in the division is too, which I don't think is a big surprise. Like I thought it was going to be fairly tightly packed anyway, but I think they should be very happy with the results that they received through the first 96 games.
Mike, I think the biggest concern for me and for some Cardinals fans is you're talking about the offense, and they just have not been an offensively explosive team, which is what I thought was going to carry them to potentially a Central Division crown. How much of that is tied to Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado?
I would say a lot. I mean, I think the fact, like Arenado swung the bat all right. He just hasn't hit for any power, and Goldschmidt's early struggles, I think, have impacted that line, but I think there's a fair amount there. I mean, listen, I don't think that Nolan Gorman, hitting under 200 and striking out at a high clip and putting up, a below average-ish offensive line overall is helping. So it's not fair to necessarily just put it on the corner guys there. And they clearly haven't received a lot of production out of center field. Now, some of that's because Nootbaar has been hurt, and some of it is because they haven't had Tommy Edman at this point. But I think that there is like that's the difficult thing, right? Is like the clearest spots to be able to upgrade are in spots where you have your leading home run hitter at second and your 2 most established pros at first and third, right? Like, and you're not going to replace Arenado, you're not going to replace Goldschmidt, you're probably not going to replace Gorman. So offensively, you're probably in a position where you need to consider getting just better results out of some of those guys rather than looking for an external addition.
I totally agree with you, and that's why we've been talking. The Cardinals have been saying publicly, and they'll say this to basically anybody that will listen, hey, we'd really like to get a right-handed bat, and that makes sense. Like, theoretically speaking, I can understand, hey, just if you put a good right-handed bat into this lineup against left-handed pitching, they would be better. However, there comes a practical element of it, of where do you put that player? Where is he hitting? Who is he taking at-bats from? And it becomes difficult for me, Mike, to find a player on this year's market that makes sense for the Cardinals when it comes to that right-handed platoon bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Mark Canha is going to be a really popular name out of Detroit, who I think absolutely fits exactly what they're looking for in a right-handed bat. But you have to remember they're going to get Tommy Edman back here, and unfortunately, Edman can't play center field and second base at the same time. But Edman's strong side is the right side. And so that should be a boost for them offensively. Now, I'm sure that there probably will be some timing issues for them early on, as there usually are with guys who've missed 3.5 months. But that internal addition, I think, is going to help. So, I mean, that's going to be one of the avenues to do it. It's not easy to find a right-handed hitting middle infielder that can complement Gorman. It's probably easier to find the right-handed hitting corner bat, whether it's Canha or former Cardinal Lane Thomas is likely available, and he has pretty pronounced platoon splits, but he crushes lefties. Those kind of guys will be out there and available on the trade market, and the cost of acquisition on them is fairly low. They're just going to have a lot of competition for them because a lot of teams need offense.
So, Mike, you mentioned chasing down the Brewers once the second half opens up. What is it that you think is going to hold back this Cardinals team from trying to catch the Brewers?
Well, I think if they don't get better offensive production from the corners, and I think they're starting pitching. I mean, those are the two things that really, I think, have a chance to impact it. I mean, from a production standpoint, only Gray has really been above average in run prevention. Gibson has been at average, and Lynn close enough to average to be within spitting distance. But they really have not done good production out of Miles Michaelis. The fifth spot in the rotation has not produced consistently. Like, I think they probably need better starting pitching as well. Bullpen's pretty good. I think it's seventh best bullpen ERA in the majors. Like, I liked their bullpen a lot. I liked their bullpen a lot coming into the year. I thought the Andrew Kittredge pickup was going to be a really good one for them. Like, I like what they've done in the pen. But I really think that they could use another starter as well. And this is where it gets a little trickier, right? Like, finding somebody that can punch some tickets, like get some strikeouts. That's really what lacks in that rotation behind Gray. And they could use that guy. So that cost of acquisition for players like that tends to be significantly higher. The guys that are maybe the best at that are available are probably like a Garrett Crochet, where the cost of acquisition is going to be super high for him. Yeah, and I just don't think the Cardinals are in a position right now where their farm system depth is such where you're like, man, that's the team we have to trade with, right? I think more than anything, the White Sox are going to have better teams to trade with. Now, Eric Fetty, who, isn't really a huge strikeout guy, but is a little bit better than what some of the Cardinals have had in that spot, he might be a fit. He's got another year control on him. He's pitched extremely well for the White Sox since coming back from Asia. So, maybe that's a guy that they would look at there. But they could definitely use some rotation help. And, again, the cost of acquisition on that tends to be the highest, especially if you're looking for guys that miss bats, because the guys that miss bats are the ones that tend to start playoff games.
Mike, I've got 8 names for you. I'm going to read these off. I want you to tell me if you're in John Mozeliak's shoes and you can add one of these 8 pitchers to your rotation to make yourself better for both the second half of the season and your playoff run, who is it that you are targeting, Mike?
Bob Gibson and Bob Forsch on the list, because I don't think they're available.
I don't think that they're going to be available this year at the deadline, but maybe. All right. Tyler Anderson, Eric Fetty, Paul Blackburn, Zach Eflin, Yusei Kikuchi, Andrew Heaney, Jack Flaherty, Michael Lorenzen. If you can add one of those 8 pitchers to your team right now, if you're in John Mozeliak's shoes, Mike Ferrin, who are you adding to this year's Cardinals?
If Jack Flaherty's back is healthy, he's the clear number 1 on that list. I mean, he's had an incredible season in Detroit. The fastball velocity is back to where it was in his best years with the Cardinals. He's striking out about a third of the hitters he's facing, and on top of it, he's striking out 8 batters for every one that he walks. He's had to have 2 injections in his back to try and deal with some inflammation. He had one, about 10 days before his last start, and then went out and shoved. So the next start is kind of key, right? Like, if he comes out healthy, then, yeah, that's a guy that should be at the top of the acquisition list. I think of all those guys, he's the one that checks all the boxes that we're looking for. The question is, are the Cardinals going to be able to offer a package that beats other teams' packages for Flaherty? Because if he's healthy, he's probably the top rental arm that's available.
There's another question on that as well, Mike, in terms of
does he actually work and fit in St. Louis again?
Yep, that's the other question that I would have on that one.
Jack Jack Flaherty, who's going to be ticked off about that, right? Like the Cardinals
Wilson Contreras?
Because Jack Flaherty struggled? I mean, guys get over stuff. You're trying to win, right? I don't think that there's, unless there's, major, and I've never heard anything from inside the Cardinals organization to suggest that there were major concerns with Flaherty's makeup or total relationship with the team or his teammates or anything like that. Unless there was something there that would just be nope, we don't want this guy. We've been down that road. It doesn't make sense. Then he's got to be the top acquisition target. If there is something there, then the next list of names that you've talked about don't have the same zhuzh. Tyler Anderson's got another year left at $13 million. He's having a nice season. He made the All-Star team, but he's not like a star pitcher. Paul Blackburn's been hurt a lot. He's kind of a back-end starter. He's not that dissimilar from Miles Michaelis. All those names that you gave in that, maybe outside of Kikuchi, who has actually thrown the ball pretty well for Toronto the last 2 years, kind of fit in that mold. And Kikuchi's an interesting guy because he really has found a comfort zone in Toronto. He's put in a lot of work with Pete Walker, their pitching coach, to improve his changeup and his curveball. It's made him much more effective. But again, we're still talking about a guy that's got an ERA over 4 in the American League East. He's good, but he's not pitching the way Jack Flaherty's pitching.
If I told you, Ferrin, that they decided to add Kikuchi, and so you've got Sonny Gray, Yusei Kikuchi, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis / Lance Lynn. That's your rotation heading into the postseason. How much better or worse is that than what the Diamondbacks had in their rotation last year?
I think it's worse than what the Diamondbacks had in their rotation last year. I mean, Zach Gallen finished third in the Cy Young Award, right? Merrill Kelly is one of the more underrated starters in the league. I think just those two guys at the top, maybe they're not quite as good as Gray, or at least the way Gray has pitched this year, but I think that's a little bit better. And then obviously, some of this thing comes in like Monday morning quarterbacking, but like Brandon Pfaadt was really good in the postseason for them last year. And that's a guy who was kind of coming on late in the season. So I don't know that that's a fair comparison for where they would be. In fact, I don't even know that rotation isn't one that I'd be super excited about in a postseason series. I'd say that. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. Like, I really believe that you need to miss bats consistently to win playoff series. And, outside of Gray, and, in that case, I mean, to a slightly lesser extent, Kikuchi. Like, Kikuchi then is your second best strikeout artist. Like, to me, he's the guy that should start game 4 of a playoff series. So it makes you better to get you through the regular season. I'm not sure that, the bullpen is doing the heavy lifting in the playoffs for the Cardinals.
So that's what my follow-up was going to be, Mike. From everything that this conversation sounds like, you can go out and try and get a starting pitcher all you want, but for the Cardinals to have any success in October, it's going to come down to their bats heating up and their bullpen holding down the fort the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think that's probably, that's the most likely path, right? Because you can't, unless they're going to magically be able to, like if they had Flaherty and Crochet, I'd feel a little different about it, right? Those are
Me too.
Then I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, they've got a rotation that can compete in the playoffs, but really it's going to come down to the bullpen. And you're right, it's the offense, it's going to be a big part of it. I mean, they're fortunate that they have a guy like Brendan Donovan who just can work at balls, right? That's going to create traffic. And, Edman isn't as good from the left side as the right, but Nootbaar should be similar to that. I know the numbers haven't been great, but the dude's been hurt a lot this year, right? You've got some different looks later down in the lineup or at the top, depending on where they put Burleson. Burleson's an aggressive hitter, but he makes a ton of contact. So, you have some interesting looks there, but in order for that lineup to succeed, you need to have some place where you can count on the power coming from, too. Home runs win playoff games. And if Goldschmidt and Arenado aren't hitting for power, it makes it really difficult to win a playoff series. But that said, the other part of it is if that offense doesn't hit, it's going to make it really tough for them to make the playoffs. I mean, it's kind of gotten lost in the wash a little bit nationally, I think, but they're only a half game ahead of the Mets for the second wild card spot, right? The Padres and the Diamondbacks are breathing down their necks. The Pirates have really good pitching. The Reds are getting healthier. They should get TJ Friedl back here in the not-too-distant future, which is really going to make their lineup go. The difference between the Reds with Friedl in the lineup and the Reds without Friedl is pretty remarkable. It's going to be a battle for them to get to the postseason, even if they add. And so, it's none of it sets up as being hey, man, we should start printing playoff tickets right now for the Cardinals. They still have a lot of work to do over these last, 66 games in order for them to get there.
We said the same thing yesterday, Mike. Every team that's in this wild card race in the National League is a good or a bad week from either being in or out of a wild card spot, depending on how the teams around them do. It's going to be nuts down the stretch. It's going to be nuts.
And some weeks they'll be both. They'll be
Sure.
it's here's the thing is that regardless of what happens between now and July 30th and the trade deadline, we can talk about all the moves that these teams make. Okay, fine. But it's still, if we're talking about 3.5 games of separation between 80% of the league in the postseason, August and September are going to matter, significantly. And what you did at the deadline may not have any impact on what ends up happening down the stretch. So it's going to make it really fun for those of us on the outside looking in.
It is. Hey, Mike, we appreciate the time as always, man. We'll be listening to you over on MLB Network Radio. We'll be following you on Twitter at Mike_Ferrin. Always a great conversation. Nobody better, in my opinion, breaking down local teams from a national level than Mike Ferrin. So appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again soon.
All right, guys. Take care.
See you, Mike. That's Mike Ferrin joining us as he does regularly here on BK and Ferrario. Always appreciate his time. Alex, I want to go through some of the conversations that we just had with Mike Ferrin there. First of all, T-Bone is just glowing. You just got a glow about him today from Mike Ferrin.
I feel like we just had me on here. That was about everything I said. Mark Hanna, Lane Thomas.
To 20 years into the future,
Kikuchi.
Tanner Hendrickson.
T-Bone is going to be Mike Ferrin.
He was on a walk, too, which goes to show you exactly it's the same person.
Me and Mike are on the same page.
You guys should start a podcast together about baseball.
I'd love to do one with Ferrin.
Just walking and talking.
The Walk and Talk podcast.
Shut up. You've got 2 other podcasts you haven't even responded to.
He's not wrong. I'm an ideas guy, not an execution guy.
He doesn't follow through very often.
Coming up next, we got a Tinder Thursday coming up with a lot of options that he just gave for you next year on 101 ESPN. All right, boys, it's time for a Tinder Thursday. This doesn't happen very often on the show, but we got to do it. It is time.
It is
time for a Tinder Thursday. It is a very simple game. T-Bone's on Tinder. If you want to check him out, just get yourself on Tinder. Swipe right or swipe left. Swipe right means you like it.
Don't wink at me when you say that.
Swipe left means you don't. Alex, are you listening? Swiping right means you like it.
No, man, T-Bone's winking at me.
Swiping left means you don't.
And
you also get one and only one Super Swipe! That means you're all the way in.
Oh, yeah.
all the way
You were
in.
shot with Cupid's arrow.
I have a few different categories of players that are going to be involved in today's Tinder Thursday. We've got controllable pitchers. These are pitchers that are going to be available for the next 2 years on the St. Louis Cardinals. We've got rental pitchers that are going to be available for the Cardinals only the remainder of this season. We also have a couple of platoon bats. A few platoon bats that we'll get into.
Swipe right, don't like it. Swipe left, love it.
No, the opposite. You're going to confuse yourself. Please don't do that. What I do want to have here is I'm going to give you not only the name on the player, because I would be interested in all of these players that I'm about to say. I think all of them could help the Cardinals. The question is, are you willing to give up what it's going to take to get them? And I've got some returns on these deals that could at least make some sense, okay? So we're going to go based on would you do the deal or not, Alex. You ready?
Sure.
All right, the first name. We've been talking about him for like 3 months at this point. It's the Fedster, Eric Fetty.
Fedster.
Thought he was going to do Kikuchi.
The Chicago White Sox starter that went overseas last year, completely changed his arsenal, added a couple of pitches that have unlocked who he is this year. If you look, by the way, at the Chicago White Sox rotation this year, and you're looking for the guy with the best ERA, it ain't Garrett Crochet. It's actually Eric Fetty. Slightly better ERA on the season than Garrett Crochet. Doesn't have a ton of swing and miss, but does have a little bit, in an ERA below 3 on the season. Alex, the return for him would be something like, according to some of the websites that are out there, these are not always 100% accurate, but they get you in the ballpark at least. Something like Ivan Herrera straight up for Eric Fetty, or a package that includes something like Roby, Sajaci, Graceffo, that kind of a deal for Eric Fetty. Are you swiping right because you like it, or left because you're out on Eric Fetty?
I'm swiping right. I've been leaning more towards left over these last few days just because, like, the swing and miss is not what you really need as a number 2. It's got okay swing and miss, but like Kyle Gibson okay swing and miss. And I'm very worried that this is like a Miles Michaelis where you get that 1 year where he's great and then it falls off. But because you need an upgrade so bad and you've got 1 more year of control for Eric Fetty, I'll swipe right. I'm not wasting a super swipe on this guy, but I will swipe right.
Yeah, I think I would swipe right as well. I think he's a guy that comes in, helps you get to October. My fear, though, is now, and I don't know if they can fix this, but I think it's going to be the theme of this Tinder Tuesday or Thursday, is he's more of a 3. And now he slots ahead of Gibson just because he's slightly better than Kyle Gibson. But they need that. Like, they do need to improve the rotation. So I would swipe right.
I'm swiping right as well. I like Eric Fetty. I think this is the exact kind of move that they probably should and maybe even will make. I also think that Ivan Herrera for Eric Fetty straight up makes a lot of sense for both teams.
I don't mind that trade.
I don't really want to give up on Herrera, but I can see where the Cardinals will do it.
And then you have more of an arsenal to upgrade, whether you want to go get another right-handed bat or if you want to go get a bullpen on with your minor league
then
system.
You use your system to be able to help you there. All right, the next one up, it's a combination. Tyler Anderson or Paul Blackburn, both of them fit into the same kind of category in terms of the trade value that they have. It's not a whole lot. You're giving up like Dylan Carlson, Ian Bedell, somebody like that, right? A prospect that's got some upside down in your system that you can dream on, or a major leaguer that's kind of stalled out, and that would be the Dylan Carlson type. So Tyler Anderson or Paul Blackburn, kind of getting you the same type of return here. Alex, you swiping right or left on those two specific pitchers?
If I could super swipe left, I would on this one. I don't want any of these guys. I don't think any of these guys make you better. In fact, I think they make you the same, if not worse, because you're going off of hope with both of these guys. So swiping left.
I think I'd go left as well. I know these guys can have success. Anderson's ERA tells you he's having success. I don't want guys to pitch contact. Just point blank, period. You heard Mike Ferrin say it. What do you need when you get to October? You need guys that have swing and miss stuff, and those guys don't have it. So I'm swiping left on both.
I'm not giving up assets for guys that are already what you have.
Yeah.
I think you already have guys. Like Tyler Anderson is Andre Palante. He's old, left-handed Andre Palante. I would just rather keep Andre Pallante in my rotation. At least there's potentially upside there. I don't want to have another $13 million starter in my rotation next year. He's got another year of control. Paul Blackburn, to me, is a little bit more interesting, but Ferrin just told us he's a back end of the rotation starter. You don't need to add another one of those. If you're going to upgrade your rotation, actually upgrade. This doesn't do that. Zach Eflin might, though.
And you better start spicing up this Tinder, because right now I'm feeling lonely.
Options.
I am feeling lonely.
This deadline stinks.
You know how they say there's a lot of fish in the sea?
That's an app, actually.
It's actually not true.
I'm headed to farmersonly.com for
Zach
this one.
Eflin is the next one that we're going to talk about. Tampa Bay Rays starter, previously with the Phillies. He's got another year left on his contract, Alex. It's a totally reasonable rate. You know the Rays are going to trade him, though, because he's making money and it's a deadline and they're not in it. So if you traded something like Andre Pallante plus Gordon Graceffo plus like a legit prospect like Jimmy Crooks, maybe you go Victor Scott and Sim Roberse, like one of those two packages, Pallante, Graceffo, and Crooks, or Victor Scott in Sim Roberse. That kind of a package could make sense for the Rays. Are you swiping right if you like it, or left if you don't on Zach Eflin as a starting rotation option for
left? I think this is Andre Pallante. I think you're probably hoping like at best Andre Pallante could be this, but as of right now, like Zach Eflin is kind of pitching like Andre Pallante. So I'm gonna go get a 4 or 5 for a couple of guys in my system that I would rather just hold on to. Nah, I'm swiping left.
Eflin was really good last season. 3.5 ERA for the Tampa Bay Rays, was a good starter for them a year ago. Was I think a Cy Young candidate?
Finished sixth in the Cy Young.
but if that was with Tampa, and like if Tampa can't get that out of him now, I'm not going to be a team that doesn't develop pitching well. Go get that guy.
He profiles as a Cardinal. Like he's been a little unlucky so far this season in terms of his results. He has a sub-4 ERA, doesn't have a lot of swing and miss.
He's got the same swing and miss as Pallante.
Well. He's a solid pitcher who is more established and more certain than Andre Pallante. So if you're going to trade for him, that's why. I'm swiping left because I'm not sure it's enough of an upgrade, but I could see the Cardinals making a move like this. I do think it makes sense for them.
Yeah, I'm swiping left as well. I don't think he's as enough of an upgrade. To me, he's kind of where Kyle Gibson is. And if you're in line with that and not slightly better, then I don't want you. And also, like what you said in some of those packages that you may have to give up, I would much rather just hold on to Gordon Graceffo and see what I have in him than go trade for Zach Eflin.
Next one up, it's T-Bone's favorite. Yusei Kikuchi. Would you trade something like Cesar Prieto and Chase Davis? So former top pick for the Cardinals, real upside with the power bat. Chase Davis has started turning it on a bit. And Prieto, who they got last year at the deadline, infield utility type of a guy, can play kind of all over the diamond, has really hit well so far this year at AAA Memphis. I think he could be an interesting piece for a team like Toronto. Yusei Kikuchi coming to the Cardinals, giving up a couple real prospects, like top 15-ish guys in your system for Yusei Kikuchi. You swiping right if you like it, or left if you don't, Alex?
I'm going to go to the Kikuchi fan.
Please.
I'm swiping left if it's going to cost me Chase Davis, and Prieto's not the one that worries me.
You were thinking the same way I was.
If I'm trading Chase Davis,
really?
I want something that's better than Kikuchi.
And Ferrin just essentially told us he's a 4.
And well, yeah, that too. But I'm
not trading Chase Davis for a 4.
Yeah, if I'm trading Chase Davis, it's for, and again, he doesn't even have to be like the centerpiece of a package. If I'm trading him, I'm getting a guy that's got control. So I'm saying, as much as I love Kikuchi, man, I was tempted to
change the name on one of them for you.
Change the name from give me somebody other than Chase Davis.
Give me a minute. I'll have to look through it.
Do it now.
You got to give me more than a second. But you're also saying no, Alex.
Yeah, I'm swiping left. I thought the same as T-Bone, and I wanted to see if he was going to go a super swipe with it. But I don't care about Prieto. I don't want to give up Chase Davis, who I invested in. Look, he has turned it on in the second half. Could be a bust. Who knows? But I'm getting a guy who Mike Ferrin told us, like, yeah, he's got some swing and miss, but he's a 4, maybe. And I'm not going to give up Chase Davis for that.
As a Tinder expert, I can tell you what just happened and correlate this while I buy BK more time. No, man, he's the guy you look at, or the girl, in my case, looking on Tinder, and you're going, wow, I'm definitely going right. And then the Chase Davis was, she has a kid, left.
Whoa, what's wrong with kids, man?
I don't want to be that guy.
T-Bone's not there yet.
You could be a good stepdad.
What if it was Gordon Graceffo and Josh Baez?
Yeah, I'm in.
Sure. That is kind of similar in terms of the
that's the package.
Value.
Super swipe!
All right, sorry. I didn't realize that those were the names that were going to take everybody off board.
I'll trade that for a 10 strikeout per 9, dude.
Graceffo's one, I don't mind trading him. He's also one that I know, like, eventually I could look back on him and go, man, he could have been helpful here. Baez is the one where it's like, you guys can dream on that upside because I think he's a flop in the system.
Okay, so basically what I'm saying is you're going to get like 2 top 20 prospects going in a deal like this, and it just becomes a question of how do you package them, right? Do you go a little higher on the list and one that's a little lower, or do you go 2 that are more like top 8 to 15?
I'm just not putting
prospects.
Chase Davis in there
Totally
unless
fair.
I'm getting something of significance.
I'm with you guys on this. I would do it either way. I would give up the kind of prospect package that is probably going to take for Kikuchi because I think he's like the only guy out there that meaningfully changes the look of your rotation. I also think I would resign him. I would give him like a 2 or 3 year deal this offseason and just keep him here in St. Louis.
Easy, Mo. Easy, Mo.
Let's see how he performs here
100%.
first.
I would wait
Mo.
until you get to the end of the year, but I would do with him
33 years old. I
what they
hand out a
should have
3-year
done with
contract.
Jordan Montgomery. All right, next one up here, Andrew Heaney or Michael Lorenzen. You're giving up a mid-tier prospect. We're talking about Robersa, Showalter, Honeymoon, McGreevy, Kloffenstein, that kind of a player.
Move on. Left. And you can move on left from the next one, too.
Next one up, Jack Flaherty. You're giving up something like a Sajasi or Palante plus some filler, or 2 of Jerpy, Graceffo, mid-tier prospect.
And look, and Mike's in the national perspective, and so he's right. Like, nothing really got out that Jack Flaherty was a problem. I'm not taking a chance on that after what took place with Wilson Contreras last year. Like, Wilson Contreras seems to be in a good place. Jack Flaherty seems to be in a good place. Leave it be. Don't try and mend old wounds and let that thing start bleeding again.
Am I crazy if I say yes?
I was just about to say, I think I would swipe right.
I'm not doing that again.
Now, I want to see what his next start looks like, because Mike's right. He's been dealing with a back injury. These guys are pros. If they want to go out and they want to win, they'll figure it out. And I think the issues with Jack, though he did kind of come off as a problem last year, I think it was Jack was trying to point fingers because it was the first time he's really failed.
It also wasn't last year, though. He's had a couple of years prior to last year where the injuries started becoming a problem.
Last year was the first time in which Jack was
I agree.
No, but the injuries with the front office. The injuries with the front office was a problem to where he felt like he was handled incorrectly.
I think that the exact same thing that Jack Flaherty did, Sonny Gray did earlier this year. Sonny Gray told the front office, I'm not doing another rehab start, and we didn't question it. We were like, okay, if you know your body, cool. And yet, when Jack Flaherty did it, we got onto him about it. So I do think it's worth noting, like, what Jack Flaherty did is not abnormal across Major League Baseball. It was just annoying for us because we saw him in 2021 throw 78 innings, 2022 throw 36 innings, and then the next year not be good when he threw 109 innings for the Cardinals. We saw the bad version of Jack Flaherty for 3.5 years.
And when Gray came back, he's shoved. And you're like, okay, you can tell he's healthy. When Flaherty came back, I don't know if he was necessarily healthy or just command wasn't there, one or the other. My
concern is that you're not going to get the version of Jack Flaherty that we've seen so far this year with Detroit. Yeah. That's my fear, but if this is what it takes to get him, I think I would probably do it. Like, if you're telling me I can get Jack Flaherty straight up for Thomas Ajayci, I don't know what Thomas Ajayci's role is on this team long term. He might end up being a really good Major League Baseball player, and that's a lot to give up for a rental. But if you're telling me that Jack is this, and he can figure stuff out in the clubhouse, him and Contreras can get back onto the same page, or hell, you just have a designated catcher for him on his days where you're going with a backup, whether it's Pages, Herrera, whoever it is at that point in time, cool. I'm fine with that. I think I might do it because, as Mike Ferrin said, he might be your best option that's available at this year's deadline.
I don't think you're getting that Jack Flaherty on this team.
And I'm willing
staying
to try
away from it.
I'm willing to figure out if he is or is not that guy. Because I can move on at the end of the year if it doesn't work.
Last thing here. Lane Thomas, you're trading a mid-tier prospect here. I'm going to say all of these guys. These are all the right-handed bats. And the mid-tier prospects for the Cardinals right now are like Semmerbursa, Showalter, Honeymoon, McGreevy, Kloffenstein, Mejia, those kinds of guys. Those are the mid-tier prospects for him. Or one of Turner, Pilar, Canna, who basically have no value on the trade market this year. You're going to have to give up essentially nothing to get them. Be swiping right or left on one of those right-handed platoon bats if that is what the return is.
I shouldn't have used my super swipe. I should use it on this one because if it's nothing and I don't care about Turner or Pilar, it's Lane Thomas or Mark Canna. Sure.
Thomas, you're going to have to give up more because of the control. Canna, you could give up very little for him.
Canna would be the one that I would target, but Lane Thomas is great too because he can play center field, and then you just move Tommy Edman to second base and move him in there with the platoon role of Nolan Gorman. Yeah, I'm absolutely doing this one.
Yeah, I'd swipe right as well. I think Canna makes a ton of sense for this team, and I'm actually even willing to swipe right on giving up a little more for Thomas because I think he brings another element that all those other guys don't. He brings speed, and he can hit left-handed pitching. He could hit second for you or lead off potentially, depending on how they want to do the lineup against a lefty. And he can get on base and he can really run.
Go
so
do
I
that.
would say swipe right.
Go do that, and then get one of the other pitchers we talked about, and then just go trade Dylan Carlson for Tyler Anderson and load up with arms.
I think my guy is very clearly Mark Canha, dude.
I love Canha.
That is my
I'm surprised he's
personal
not going to cost you a lot.
Lane Thomas. Well, he's older. He's on an expiring deal. He didn't have a whole lot of value on the free agent market this offseason. Like, this is just not the type of player that typically gets paid in a meaningful way. He's also played in bigger markets. He's played in markets where there's a lot of scrutiny on player. Like he was in New York and played for the Mets and was pretty decent for them, honestly, given what they expected him to be. That's the kind of guy that I want. I still fear, like, I would swipe left on Lane Thomas for a bigger prospect. I'm just out. I fear what he's going to be down the stretch, crunch time situation for a team that is in a playoff race. I fear that because of what we saw from him in 2020. And maybe that's unfair of me, but I don't want that. So I would go Mark Canha would be my number one option. I think Pilar would actually be number two on this list for me because of the ability to play in center field for him, depending on what happens with Tommy Edman. But Canha would easily be my number one choice here. I would swipe right on him. I do not have a super swipe this year at the trade deadline.
Oh, you're just afraid to
Unless
put
something
yourself
comes
out there.
out that is unforeseen, I don't have anybody that reaches that level for me. It's just not that kind
You're
of
just
a
afraid to put yourself out there, man. But you know what? It's okay.
He's Alex.
We'll still find
That's
out.
T-Bone.
Yeah, we'll
I'm
find
BK. Coming up next,
think.
ESPN did their top 100 athletes of the 21st century. We want to do our top 5 local athletes of the 21st century. If you guys want to get your lists in right now at 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll give you ours coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alex, the college football season is just around the corner, and that means it's time to start looking at what you're going to be betting on this year for the college football season. And one of those options for you over on the Circa Sports app in Illinois is who do you think is going to win the SEC? If you think the front runner, Georgia, is going to win the conference, the place to bet on that is over on Circa because they've got 2-1 odds on Georgia to win the SEC championship game. If you do that exact same bet over on FanDuel, it's plus 185. So if I bet $100 on Circa, I'm getting 200. If I bet $100 on Georgia over on FanDuel, I'm getting $185. Bama, for example. I get 8-1 odds on Circa, 7-1 over on FanDuel. And if you think a long shot like Oklahoma is going to win the SEC championship game, first of all, you're nuts. Second of all, you got 35-1 odds over on Circa, 27-1 odds on FanDuel. You're getting better odds with Circa Sports.
Yeah, speaking of that long shot, don't put money down on Tiger Woods over in Circa Sports to win the Open, because that's just not going to go well. But whether you're getting those tight money line splits, you're going for those future plays at Circa Sports, which I urge you to do, because they're not limiting people based off of their winnings. You're bringing it all in thanks to Circa Sports Illinois. Download the app today. It's the exclusive app that BK and Ferrario use for all of our sports betting needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Major League Baseball just announced the 2025 schedule, and the Cardinals will open the 2025 season at home March 27th versus the Minnesota Twins. And the Cardinals are off today as they're still on the All-Star break. They'll be back in action tomorrow when they start a 3-game set at the Atlanta Braves. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So ESPN put together a list earlier today, Alex, of the top 100 athletes of the 21st century. And I saw it and I was like, man, that's a really interesting thought process, because this is for us, for people our age, Alex, basically our childhood up until today. Like, my first real sports memories begin in like 1998. I was 6, 7 years old. I remember my first Super Bowl that I remember watching was the Broncos versus the Falcons. That was like the beginning of my real understanding of what it meant to be a sports fan. And this also includes some of like the Olympic games that we've seen, like Michael Phelps, big part of my childhood. I watched him. He became the #1 athlete of the 21st century, according to this article on ESPN.com. That being said, they only had one St. Louis athlete on this list, and it was Albert Pujols who made the list in the top 100. He ended up coming in at number, I believe, 24 on this list overall, the top 100 athletes of the 21st century. Now, technically, Aaron Donald, also a St. Louis athlete, but really he was known for what he did in his time with the LA Rams as opposed to here in St. Louis, but technically a St. Louis athlete as well, if you want to include him on this list. I wanted to do something a little bit different based upon this article. Who would you have as your top 5 St. Louis athletes of the 21st century? So this is 2000 up until today. What we have seen from them, and you can value primes, like whatever the peak performance was of that player, you can value that a certain way. You can value longevity. You can take this list in any different direction, and I think it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
For me, I thought there were 3 guys that were obvious. Like, you have to have these 3 on your list no matter what, in my opinion, because of what they did in their times here in St. Louis, both with longevity and also peak. After that, it gets really difficult. So, Alex, what did you end up with your top 5 St. Louis athletes for the 21st century?
And I'm only assuming here the 3 that you said were obvious. 1 being Albert Pujols, 2 being Yadier Molina, and then my obvious one was Chris Carpenter. Those are my 3 obvious ones.
He did not make my top 5.
Wow. Okay. So then those are my 3 obvious ones, and then like you said, that's where it got really tough. I do not have a Ram on my top 5. I had
one Ram that I think for me I had to have on my top 5.
Is it the same one?
Probably not the same one as you.
Okay, interesting.
So the rounding on my top 5, I put Adam Wainwright, and then I had Alex Pietrangelo. I'm probably going to get pushback on the Pietrangelo one and not putting a St. Louis Ram one, but man, I just went back and looked at it from the year he made his debut until the year he left in free agency for Vegas. He had 5 top 10 Norris Trophy votes, or 5 different years where he was a top 10 Norris Trophy candidate. He was an all-star almost every single season. He only missed 1 season due to an injury, and then of course rounded it out as the captain with the Stanley Cup. So you're talking longevity-wise and peak performance as being one of the better defensemen. I had to put Petro in there.
So I did not have Petro on my list. I had at 5. I went back and forth on it, but I decided to go with Adam Wainwright as well. I have Waino there because he was top 5 in signing, I think, 4 years, basically in a 5-6 year stretch. Now, he did have that weird kind of back end of his career
on my list
but
as well.
I think the longevity, 200 wins, which is an unbelievable accomplishment. I think he has to be on the list, so that's why I have him at number 5 for me.
So my number 1 was Albert. We all agree he's number 1 on the list.
That was easy.
My number 2, Kurt Warner.
I was going to put Kurt Warner, but and I know you're going peak, but I mean, you're only doing 4 years of it.
Not even that, really. I mean, it was like 2 because he's hurt in 2 of the years.
It was really 3. So I'm including the 99 season because his playoffs took place in the year 2000.
I mean, I almost put him on there because he was an MVP 2 separate years.
You won the Super Bowl, and he won the MVP. Now, I can't include the MVP season because that was prior to the year 2000. That was in 1999. In terms of the regular season that year, I can't include that. But his postseason run took place in the year 2000. So that is a part of the conversation that we're talking about here. And if you're telling me I get to do that, win on a Super Bowl run and won an MVP and had arguably one of the most memorable 3-year runs by a quarterback of the 21st century, regardless of team, I feel like I have to have that guy on my list. The greatest show on turf Rams will go down when you think about the best offenses that we have ever seen in the history of the NFL. If you don't mention the greatest show on turf, you are doing yourself and doing the sport of football a disservice. And he was the architect of it all. He was the guy that made it all possible. So to me, I have to have him not only on my list, but really high up on my list because of how he ranked compared to his peers at that point in time. If we're talking about Waino, if we're talking about Carpenter, those guys were great. They were never, in my opinion at least, the absolute best, the pinnacle of their sport. Kurt Warner was, and it took place here, and it took place in the 2000s. So to me, he has to be at number 2. Number 3, I had Yadier Molina. Number 4, I had Orlando Pace.
I was going to put him too, but man, it's so hard to argue for a left tackle.
Dude, best one in the game, arguably. And did it at such a high level for such a long time. I've got to have Orlando Pace as a part of this conversation as well. To me, I think he has to be on a list like this. And most of his career took place in the 2000s. Was an all-pro multiple times. Made a Pro Bowl each of the 6 years after the year 2000. Like that dude, he's got to be a part of it. And then at number 5, I had Waino because of the longevity. That's what put him, to me, over Chris Carpenter is how long he was able to do it. So Albert, Kurt Warner, Yadier Molina, Orlando Pace, and Adam Wainwright.
All 4 of my Cardinals that I picked because all 4 of them had massive reasons why this team won World Series in 2006 and 2011.
So I did not have Warner because I just couldn't do 2 years, 3 years, whatever you wanted to call it. And I didn't pull that. I did have the Ram I had on there was Torrey Holt. He's in my top 5 because his production was in the early 2000s. He had 8 seasons over 1,000 yards, 6 over 1,300.
He was in my top 10.
He's in my top 5. I've actually got him at number 2. I think it's one of the most impressive stretches in NFL history. And we've talked about it. He should be a Hall of Famer, and I think he will eventually get in. I had Yachty at 3, and then I've gone back and forth if I want to have Laddie or Jim Edmonds at 4. I think Jim Edmonds, underrated. I mean, you look at his stretch there, 6 seasons over an 800 OPS, 5 of those 6 over over 900 OPS. And not only did he bring offense, he brought defense with 6 Gold Gloves. To me, he comes in at number 4 on my list. Vladdy just misses out at 6, Petrangelo 7.
So we just listed my top 10 because if we're going 6 through 10, Kurt Warner, I had Torrey Holt, I had Jim Edmonds, I had Vladimir Tarasenko, and I had Isaac Bruce. Like, that is my top 10. And I think top 10 is pretty easy. You'd have a couple of guys here and there. Top 5 was the part that you're really arguing.
So hard, dude. Once I got beyond 3, I could have made a case for the guys that you mentioned that I did not have on my list. I thought Tarasenko and Petro, those were the 2 blues that I really considered for a list like this. Jim Edmonds is somebody that I historically think it's so underrated.
Agreed.
Like, that dude was unfreaking believable in a Cardinals uniform. Other guys that get underrated, in my opinion, include 2 guys that T-Bone mentioned off-air, Matt Carpenter and Holiday as well. It's hard. It's really hard to come up with a list like this, but when you got to break it down to the top 5, I felt like Kurt Warner, Orlando Pace, those were the 2 Rams, and then I had 3 Cardinals on my list.
And I think one Ram that would be in my top 10, because Pace, I like the Orlando Pace one. Again, I devalue a left tackle, which I shouldn't do, is Steven Jackson. Steven Jackson, to me, a top 10 athlete in St. Louis. What he did here in the 2000s, where I think it was like 7 or 8 straight years, over 1,000 yards rushing.
He's in that Matt Holiday range for me. Like,
he belongs in the top 10
good,
for me. Yeah.
But just for whatever reason, doesn't seem to get the consideration that he should.
Because he was never on a good team.
Yeah, totally fair.
Yeah.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, coming up in about 10 minutes or so, up or down? Are you guys going to be projecting these guys to be up or down based on production in the second half compared to what they did for the Cardinals in the first? The Junk Drawer is next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. So T-Bone came in pretty hungover today and said, I've got a junk drawer story for us for you guys.
That's always a good start to a story.
Gee,
So
hear
I
the
said,
boss
all
run
right,
me over.
What do we got?
Throw it in the reverse for me.
What do you have, my friend?
So I went out last night with some family, and we just went to a mini golf place. That was kind of the fun activity for the night. And we're out there.
Hold on, you got drunk at a mini golf course? Good for you.
No, I got drunk
I
a
do that
wave.
when we go to Disney World.
You get drunk at a mini golf course?
Absolutely. They have these massive Fosters.
I play better.
They're like 30-ounce cans of Fosters. We get like 2 or 3 of
Just
those.
imagining you standing behind a family who's mini golfing and just plaster.
Yeah, Disney
Hit
World.
the ball!
It's a Disney mini golf course, and we go out and have a great time. It's a lot of fun.
It wasn't there. It was after.
Were you
where it
drinking
got me.
Fosters?
No, I was not drinking Fosters. But
You didn't have
anyways,
Fosters?
so we're at the
Weird.
mini golf place.
Australia.
And there's this group of people in front of us, like group of 5 or 6 people in front of us. And they ended up letting us play through. But one of the guys in that group was walking around the mini golf place, no shoes, no socks, nothing, barefoot.
Oh, it's called grounding.
That's
Is
disgusting.
that a thing now? That's what my sister said. I said, what is this guy doing?
That's
she
disgusting.
says, well, I think it's a thing now. And I went, it is?
Yeah.
Dude, no way would I ever
Supposed to
want to
feel
do
like
that.
the magnetic force.
Oh,
beneath
I bet.
you.
Cool, do that at your house. Don't go out in public places with your nasty ass feet out.
It was
It's
disgusting.
disgusting.
I
Anytime
agree.
people do it,
Some
when it-
athletes are doing this now, where like they'll go
disgusting.
either as barefoot as they can, so they'll like wear socks, or some of them will have like shoes that are very low.
dude, you know me.
profile.
I don't wear flip flops in the summer out in public. Like my feet are
don't
always
either.
covered because that's. No, I don't need people to see
called
my feet.
etiquette.
It's disgusting. There's people when I used to go to the movies, pre-COVID. It would be on a nightly basis when I would go. Somebody would have their shoes and socks off and their bare feet up on the seats. What kind of farm did you grow up on to think that that was okay?
I'm
it's
out on that.
disgusting.
Out on that.
You don't put your bare feet out in public for other people
I
to see.
couldn't
Were they
believe
wearing
what I was
socks?
doing.
Just like
It was
full-on
full barefoot.
bare naked.
And like I saw no
How is that allowed?
I saw no like shoes in sight. So it wasn't like he took them off and like he just was roaming around.
It's disgusting.
I know. It was
Yeah, if people are texting grounding, it's an amazing feeling. Cool, do it at home.
See,
I go ground all the time at home.
when I played in soccer, we would go like a practice where we'd go barefoot, and I didn't enjoy that because you're supposed to get a better sense for the touch of the ball. Yeah, right.
You know where I go
But
grounding in the shower.
I hated it. I did not enjoy it. And that's on grass. This guy was like walking around on like there was rocks, there was asphalt.
Psycho. What'd you
Ow.
call him?
Huh?
What'd you call him? Oh, asphalt. Oh, they called him something else.
Coming up
I wanted
next,
to
let's
call
play a
him
game of
something
up
else.
or down. You going up or down in terms of the projection for these players based on what they did in the first half of the season for the Cardinals? We'll tell you next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So I want to play a game of up or down. It's a very simple game. If you think a player's production is going to go up, you say up. If you think a player's production is going to go down,
I'm confused. Do
down.
I go to the left or the right?
I have to simplify these games so much for Alex Ferrario
We're
because
going all 4 directions today.
we've had to go like with this or that.
What was the game we played with Rivs that Jamie never understood?
What was it?
Was it more likely to happen? No.
I think that might have been it.
Jamie never understood the concept of the game.
In or out.
Was it?
Yeah, I feel like it was one of those.
Every time BK brought it up.
The two of you would drive me nuts with
We'd
it,
be like,
man.
what kind of game is this?
It's like, dude, you have 2 options. It's very simple. Are you in or are you out? To be fair, you were also very bad at it.
Wow.
You were right there with it.
These games are stupid.
That's like the segment that we had a couple of segments ago where we were talking about, are you swiping right or left?
I've
When
never
you
used
confuse
Tinder.
yourself,
I've never used
that's
Tinder.
when things go awry.
Show your age.
Well, that's true.
Anyways.
Come on, man. Snapchat.
So a very simple game. Based on what we saw in the first half, are they going to be better or worse, basically, in the second half? So up or down? Are they going to go up or down in their production? Let's start out with Paul Goldschmidt. He had a 665 OPS in the first half of the season. Alex, do you think that's going to go up or down in the second half?
I think he will go up. He seems like one that was at least trending in the right direction. I don't think we're talking significant up. I think you're talking about, maybe above 700 OPS by the end of the season. I believe Paul Goldschmidt will go up because for him, it seems like power might show up second half with a little time off and because he was at least trending someone in the right direction.
I'll say it goes up. I kind of agree with Alex. I don't think it's going to go up significantly to where he gets super hot down the stretch, but I think it will go up. I mean, you look kind of the peak under the hood with the advanced numbers. It does show that he should be putting up a little bit better numbers. The one reason I don't think he astronomically goes up is he's chasing too much and his whiff rate's really up compared to years past.
The strikeouts are what are concerning. Because if you look at every other underlying number, dude hits the ball hard. He barrels it up. The expected numbers are really good, and it's just not translating. The bat speed's still fine. Like his bat speed is not like Nolan Arenado. Arenado's bat speed, and this is the first year they're tracking it, and I think it's silly to compare other players' bat speeds across the league compared to themselves. Like, are they losing their bat speed? That's really what you want to see. And Arenado's bat is, relatively speaking, pretty damn slow in terms of his swing speed. Goldie's is not. Goldie's is still pretty fast, man. It's a matter of him whiffing a lot and him striking out all the time. And that means when he makes contact with the ball, it's got to be a really high batting average on balls in play. And we'll see. We'll see if that's able to happen in the second half. I would bet on his production going up, but I think you guys are right. I think there's a limit on how high that can go because of the strikeouts. If you're striking out 30% of the time, it's just really hard for you to be a great player.
I hope this makes sense when I say this. I think his production will go up enough to where you can justify hitting him 5.
Sure.
Because, right now, it's hard to justify when he's hitting, 4 or 5, wherever they had him in the lineup. I think by the time you get to the end of the year, you're going to be able to go, okay, I can see why he's hitting at the 5 spot.
So his batting average on balls in play this year, just as a simple statistic, it's 296. That is about league average. That's what you would typically expect for a league average player. The difference for Goldie is that his career batting average on balls in play is 345. And that's got to be where it is in the second half for him to be able to get back to his old types of production. If he starts experiencing some more of those positive batted ball luck, and there's nothing in his data that suggests that he shouldn't, it should go up, you'll see a little bit of a boost in production, so it would go up. All right, next one up. Nolan Arenado, 705 OPS in the first half. Are you saying it's going to go up or down in the second half, Alex?
I'm not believing. I think it's going to go down. I think you probably remain somewhere around that, but I think you're probably talking about 700 OPS, maybe slightly below.
Yeah, I'm going to go down as well.
Wow.
There's nothing for me to point to that says, he's going to really go beyond a 705 OPS.
He's got to go on a surge to do that.
You mentioned his bat speed. He doesn't hit the ball hard. He's not hitting. He's hitting for okay contact for average, but at some point he's going to go cold, and he's not hitting for any power. So he's not really going to drive up his OPS. I think it's going to be down.
And I think a majority of his games, if I'm not mistaken, the second half are played at Busch Stadium. Don't they have more home games than road games the rest of the way?
I'm not sure on that, but I think it's probably pretty close either way. I'm going to go up a little bit. I think the average is going to be there for Nolan Arenado. I think he's kind of figured out how to maintain his swing with what he's got right now. I don't think he's got a lot of power, and so I don't expect the slugging percentage to get overly high, but I think he could hit 295. 295 in the second half of the season. I think that's within his range of outcomes. So I'm going to say up slightly. Not a lot, but a little bit. Alec Burleson, 815 OPS in the first half. Alex, you going up or down for the second half?
I'm going to go down, but I think he kind of remains around 800 OPS. I'm hoping he goes up because it seems like consistently we found it. But, man, I mean, if you're going up from there, you're talking about a guy who might end the season closer to 900 OPS, and that's just so hard for me to believe. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to say go down.
I'm going to go up with Burley. I think he can be a guy that hits 30 home runs and ends up having a 850 OPS potentially. So I'm going to say up for Burleson.
It's hot right now. That helps him. Just the ball carries a little bit more. So that would make me think up. But, dude, an 815 OPS is really good. Like, guys that have a worse OPS right now than him include, like, William Contreras, Francisco Lindor, Adley Rutschman, Austin Riley, Pete Alonso. Like, we're talking about good players that are below an 815 OPS this year. That's top 40 in Major League Baseball in terms of his OPS at this point in the season. So I'm going to say down, not because I think it's going to be a bad second half of the season, but because he can be well above league average and still be pretty significantly below where he's at right now. Just because the offense in general is down. All right, next one up is Wilson Contreras, a 915 OPS in the first half of the season, which is just ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. Alex, are you going up or down from that in the second half?
Yeah, I'm going to go down because that, once again, is just an absurd number. I do think, though, he finishes with the highest OPS on the team at the end of the season. I think he is your best bat at the end of the year, but 915 going up is just wild.
I'm going down as well. He's been better this year offensively than Yordan Alvarez, and Yordan Alvarez has been freaking awesome. To put that in context on just how great Wilson Contreras has been for the Cardinals when healthy, he's not that far behind Steven Kwan, who's getting like MVP consideration in the American League if it wasn't for Aaron Judge and Shohei.
If he doesn't get injured and miss the time he does, I seriously think we're talking about him being an MVP this year.
I agree. He'd be in the conversation. I'm going down just because, like, if he does better than 915, man,
yeah, this team's in a good spot if he's going above 915.
As I said, I think Wilson Contreras is going to go down in terms of his OPS. I think Alec Burleson is going to go down in OPS. And you guys think, like, if anything, just up a little bit in the second half in OPS. They're going to have to make up that ground somewhere because this offense has to be better than what it was in the first half. And I think there's a pretty decent case that there's going to be some regression from some of the guys that carried the offense for most of the season. I think there are 4 players that are capable of doing that for this team in the second half. 2 of them I'm not betting on, and that's Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. The other 2, Nolan Gorman, is capable of carrying your offense for a month. He has not really done that outside of literally a 3-week stretch at one point in the first half of the season. And then Lars Nootbaar, who has had some really excellent second halves in this first 3 years of his Major League career. I think 2 of those 4 players that I just mentioned have to have significant improvements offensively from what they were in the first half for this team to be who they want to be.
Yeah, and I'm just me personally, I think only 2 of those have the MVP caliber to carry a team. Nolan Gorman, when it looks good, it looks great, but it's just hard for me to believe that it stays consistently. And I think the same can be said with Lars Nootbaar. I don't know if Lars is touching MVP level when he's at his best. I think you're talking about a really good complementary piece. It really comes down to Goldschmidt or Arenado because you need guys to perform like MVPs. And if Contreras continues that, just give me one of them. Give me one of them, and your roster is in place to where the complementary pieces can continue to carry you over the finish line.
Last thing real quick. We were talking earlier on the trade deadline of who we would add, and we talked about Jack Flaherty and the case for him. Our conversation with Mike Ferrin, he said that's probably the best arm that's going to be available to the Cardinals that they could actually acquire. I put it out on Twitter. Would you be in favor of the Cardinals trading Thomas Saggese straight up for Jack Flaherty? Now, you can make an argument that's light. That's probably not enough of a return because of the lack of pitching that is going to be available at the deadline. There's going to be a serious demand for it that could boost the price for Jack Flaherty. I gave 3 options. I want you guys to guess kind of what the breakdown is here. Yes, bring him back. No, that's too much to give up for Jack Flaherty. Or no, I don't want Jack Flaherty at any cost. Those were the 3 options
any cost I gave. Any cost I have to believe people are saying is the highest ranked.
One of 2 reasons BK brought this up. It's either A, what we both think is it's like 70% said no way I'd bring him back, or it is surprisingly like 40% said they'd bring him back.
No, see, I wonder if BK's bringing it up.
60% said no way I'd take him.
If BK's bringing it up, I wonder if it's no, that's too high of a price for him.
I would hope Cardinals.
What would you guys guess is the breakdown?
I think it's 60%, no chance I want him back.
I'm going to say 75%, no chance I want him back.
I'll say 20% too much and 20% yes.
75, no chance. 15%, it's too much, and 10%, it's yes.
We're at almost 500 votes. It's 33% for all 3.
Really?
It's exactly even. I mean, literally, the breakdown is 33.3%, 33.6%, 33.1% on all 3 of the options.
Damn.
People are very split. Now, that means 2/3 of people do not want Jack Flaherty, to be fair.
But like if you said if it's the one of it's too much, okay.
You can make a package potentially there that people would be in favor of talking about Jack Flaherty on the Cardinals. We're going to spend some time on that tomorrow. I want to talk about that a little bit more, kind of flesh that idea out.
That.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to play a game of Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario, we'll tell you if we are believing it, and we'll sing next year on 101 ESPN.
This is for Jack Flaherty. We want him back.
Whoa.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free. We're flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not.
Sorry,
I think that was
Jack.
T-Bone's best performance he's ever had on that.
Because I want Jack
T-Bone was
back.
excellent
Man,
at the beginning of
surprising
that.
because he
BK was
overcame
reading
your
me.
problem.
I know. BK was reading me some of Jack's peripherals, the look under the hood. Oh man, that was for Jack Flaherty, and now he's not coming because of
Guys
BK.
need to stop
The
fooling
breaking ball is
yourself.
back.
Yeah.
Jack might be back.
Yeah.
For the first time since T-Bone's been trying to make Jack Flaherty a thing for
Yeah,
3 years.
You guys are
Last year
fooling
was
yourself.
tough.
Who's going to be the catcher that he's throwing to?
Bias.
Yeah, Pedro Paez.
Oh, God. Honestly, you're not wrong there.
Jack Flaherty last year, batting average against his slider, 340. Batting average against it this year, 205. Whiff rate last year, 25%. This year, 40%. It's a different pitch. We know with Jack Flaherty, that slider is what everything is based on. If he doesn't have that, he doesn't have anything because he can't get dudes out. And this year, it's working for him. He's throwing it 35% of the time. It's the most that he's thrown it in his major league career. We've seen the Cardinals have been highly targeting sliders. Look at Kyle Gibson. Look at Sonny Gray. Look at all of the guys that they've added in their bullpen. So let's get to this for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals will talk with the Tigers about reacquiring Jack Flaherty at this year's trade deadline.
Not believe it. I don't think Mo re-engages about that at all. I think they're going to that ship has sailed, and it's one of those things that it worked out for him, it worked out for the Cardinals, and it's a clean split. I don't see them doing it.
I'm not going to believe it, even though I do think they should. I'm not going to believe it because I think he's going to cost too much. I think what Mike Ferrin said is probably how baseball values Jack Flaherty.
Sure.
And if that's the case, Jack Flaherty's going to become a bidding war, and that's one that the Cardinals won't want to get involved in. And I think they're probably looking for somebody that has control as well. And he doesn't have that free agent at the end of the year. So I'm going to say not believe it, even though I would love to see him here.
I'm going to believe it.
BK's found his new guy.
No, not for me, for them. I think it makes a lot of sense. All of the stuff that they've been looking for, and literally stuff, profile, he fits all of that criteria. If they really want to upgrade the rotation, man, if Jack Flaherty's name was Yusei Kikuchi, like nothing else changed about him, but his name was Yusei Kikuchi and he hadn't played for the Cardinals before, this would be the single most obvious trade candidate for the Cardinals in the history of deadline editions.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. But because it's Jack Flaherty, it's not going to happen.
I just don't know. I don't know how they view him. I remember, I'll go ahead and bring this to air. I remember last year, right around the trade deadline, I was there. I think it was day of the deadline, actually. I was there and I was talking to Ollie. And I asked him, I said, what would it be like for you guys if you didn't trade Jack? Because this is a few hours before the deadline, and at this point, they hadn't moved him yet. And there was real talk, real reporting that the Cardinals might keep Jack Flaherty and qualifying offer him because they would get more via either the comp pick or just having Jack back another year than they would potentially to trade him at the deadline. And then eventually the Orioles came in, they gave him an offer that they really liked with Prado and
Drew Rom.
Drew Rom.
Hey, Drew Rom was supposed to be a part of this rotation.
A lower level pitching prospect that seems like maybe is progressing through their system a little bit. But anyways, I talked to him about Flaherty and he said, I asked him if he'd be okay with that. He's like, dude, I love Jack Flaherty. And this was not in front of cameras or anything like that. This was just off to the side conversation. I love the intensity, would love to continue to have him as a part of our rotation, not just for right now, but for the foreseeable future. I don't think the manager had any issues whatsoever with Jack Flaherty. I think there was not exactly an eye to eye that was seen between he and the president of baseball operations. I also wonder if Mo is looking at this and saying, hey, Chaim Bloom, who do you think would be the best guy to acquire at this year's deadline? He's helped them with some of their pitching acquisitions over the offseason. Maybe he's going to help them again to target the right guy at this year's deadline. He also put his pride aside a little bit in bringing back a guy like Lance Lynn, who Lynn was not brought back by this specific front office when he was in free agency. And I always wondered if that was going to be something that hindered their ability to bring him back in the future. And they brought him back too. So I don't know, man. I could see them doing it. Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, believe it or not, now follow along with me here for a minute. Believe it or not, Scott Perunovich scores more points on the power play this season than Torrey Krug did in any individual season with the Blues. So for context, Krug put up 13 points, 19 points, 13 points, 13 points on the power
He's
play.
been here for 4 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he signed him to a 7-year deal. 7, 6, 6.5.
I'm going to say not, because I just don't know if he's going to be able to get the playing time. I don't know that he's going to be on the ice enough. Just in terms of sheer number of games to be able to put up those kinds of numbers. He played at least 50 games, Torrey Krug did, in each of his 4 seasons with the Blues. I do not know that we're going to see that much playing time for Perunovic this year. So
Perunovic had, 56 last year? 54 last year?
Perunovic played 50-something games?
Well, yeah, that's how they got the RFA status.
I can't believe he played that many games.
54 games.
It was forgettable.
And they didn't play him a lot on the power play. Like, they played him some once Torrey Krug and Justin Falk's injury took place, but mainly it was Krug and
Falk.
Falk.
They have more options this year.
I don't know, do they? On the power play?
P.O. Joseph.
I don't know if Joseph's in the lineup.
Letty, potentially. Falk. I think whether it's for spots in your lineup or for the power play, I think if he does not perform, there will be other opportunities.
Yeah. I'm not going to believe it because of that, what you said, where if he's not performing, they can try different people. And I'm not sure that they're going to have the same success from when Bannister took over the power play, when he took over as the interim coach, because they then started doing with, okay, we're going to put Neighbors in front, and we're going to put like Sundqvist in front. I don't know if they're going to have that same success. I think the most important part of a power play is a slap shot, and they still don't have that. So I'm going to say not believe it.
I'm going to believe this one. I think it was probably a given. I think Claude Julien working with the power play is going to find a way to get this guy to shoot more. And I don't think you need a slap shot. I think you need a good shot that can get to the net because you can get deflections.
Guys, believe it or not, we will see the Cardinals make at least 3 trades at this year's trade deadline.
Nah.
At least three separate trades or adding 3 players?
3 separate trades.
Not.
I think you see 1, maybe 2 if you get lucky.
I think what you could see is the package of a starter and a reliever together. So I could see them making multiple trades, but I think it will, and potentially even 3 players. I do not think it will be 3 separate trades.
That's where I am. I'm not going to believe this. I think they will get 3 players. I'm trying to figure out where the package is, though, where they get it. Because Kikuchi, Yimi Garcia. That's the kind of package that I've looked at. You know, maybe you do a Lane Thomas and one of their bullpen arms in Washington. I do think they're going to have 2 trades, and it will one of them will be a package. The other one will be just for a player like Jack Flaherty.
314-399-9646. Mark Hanna and Jack Flaherty, maybe.
Oh.
Keep dreaming.
That would be actually a really fun trade.
That would be
Does Flaherty have trade protection?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
He signed a 1-year option deal. I doubt he's got protection on it.
Where I'm at as well. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals will have a 2-4 record in their first road trip of the second half. That's at Atlanta and at Pittsburgh.
Believe it.
Apparently, they're going to be going up against Paul Skeens in one of those games.
When I heard Derek Shelton announce at ESPN Movie Network Radio, I went,
And your first 3 starters are
Schwellenbach going up against them in the first game of the second half.
And you've got Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis, and then I would assume Lance Lynn.
Vellante.
So, yeah, I'm going to say 2 and 4. I'm going to believe that one.
I wouldn't be shocked. Shelton didn't announce this yesterday. He only announced Skeens because he's the only guy he got asked about. Of course, I wouldn't be shocked if they push Jones back as well.
Makes sense.
Try and get both those young arms as much time as possible. So you're probably going to see both Jones and Skeens in that series, and potentially Keller if he's the guy that starts the first game out of the All-Star break. Yeah, I'll believe that they probably start 2 and 4.
Chris Sale. Looks like it's Schwellenbach, Morton, and Fried.
I'm a little surprised that they're doing that, but I guess it makes sense trying to.
Yeah, you got to limit the innings on that, dude.
And they're doing it with Lopez as well. You didn't say Lopez's name, doing the same thing.
You do look out.
So you avoid arguably their top 2 starters in that first. I'm going to say,
even though like Fried and Morton are not.
You got to beat the Braves in 3.
Get 2 out of 3.
We can't hit lefties.
You're not beating Skeens.
Yeah, I know. If you get 2 out of 3 in the first series and then 1 out of 3 in the second, you go.
But you said 2 and 4.
Yeah,
correct.
Okay.
Better than 2 and 4. He just said.
Yeah.
Take 2 or 3 from Atlanta.
You get 3 out of the 6. That is better than going 2 and 4. So yeah, you get 2 out of 3 against Atlanta. At least win 1 out of the 3 against Pittsburgh. I think you could easily win 2 out of the 3 against Pittsburgh. I don't think Jared Jones, by the way, is like unhittable. Paul Skeens is. I have nothing bad to say about him at this point.
Jones is like I think a really good potential too.
Like Max Fried versus Jones. I would rather have Max Fried.
Didn't Jared Jones pitch against the Cardinals already?
I think the Cardinals.
I don't think they've
missed
seen
him, if I'm not mistaken.
You might be right.
I could be wrong on that, but he's not unhittable. He's
5 innings, 1 earned run, 4 hits the Cardinals had off of him.
We had 4 hits off of him.
And 5 innings.
Well, that's the Pirate special with him.
Also 5 strikeouts. But
he goes 5 and then walks the plank to the dugout.
Anyways, I think you're doing A-okay right now.
No, that was
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Somebody on the text line said, you guys are miserably negative, huh?
No, man. We really are.
No, man, I joined the train. Choo-choo. I'm negative on the Jack Flaherty front because I don't think that's a good idea.
Oh, is that what they were upset about?
No, probably about the Cardinals because we said down on everything. But do I think Wilson Contreras is going to be better than a 915 OPS?
I haven't said.
I think it's because you guys said they were going to go 2-4 in the second half. I just told you I think they could go 4-2.
Well, I mean, they got a tough second half. That's the only reason I believe that.
Yeah, and I mean, like
going up against arguably the best pitcher in baseball right now in Paul Skeens, and you're going up against one of the best teams in the National League. It wouldn't be like if they go 2-4, it's also not the end of the world.
Well, but also
they
like
could absolutely rebound from
it's
that.
also your offense hasn't been consistent. And look at the 4 pitchers that you're throwing out there. You know, like I'm a little concerned on that front.
Oh, Jared Jones on the IL?
Oh, well, no wonder why he's not going to be in
that would be why they're skipping his start.
Yeah. Somebody said, good show prep, guys.
Sorry I didn't follow the Pittsburgh Pirates. My bad.
They don't play them until next Monday, so we got some times to prep for that one. Appreciate the heads up, though, in all seriousness. I did not realize that he had been placed on
I like the heads
list.
up. I didn't need the snarky comment.
Coming up next, how should we re-rank our 5 most important Cardinals for the second half of the season? We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Today, Major League Baseball announced the 2025 MLB schedule, and the Cardinals will open the season in 2025 on March 27th at home against the Minnesota Twins. And the Cardinals are off today before they start the second half of the season tomorrow when they visit the Atlanta Braves. 6:20 will be first pitch, and Sonny Gray will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex T-Bone on BK, so we had this idea last night as I was kind of going through, okay, how did we rank our 20 most important Cardinals coming into the season? At the time, the top 5 for us, I mean, I feel like our rankings were fair. How have the players done that we had in our top 5? Not great.
Terrible.
Number 1 was Sonny Gray. I still feel like that was a reasonable place to have him. He's been really good. Number 2, Nolan Arenado. Number 3, Paul Goldschmidt. Number 4, Miles Michaelis. Oof. Number 5, Lars Nootbaar. Not great. Signs of life, though. So that was our top 5 coming into the season. If you got a do-over, guys, and you could re-rank your top 5 most important Cardinals, and this is just for the second half of the season, from here until the end of the year, your 5 most important Cardinals, how would you rank it, Alex? I think this is a really difficult proposition.
Do you want me to give all top 5, or do we want to go like position by position in terms of 1 through 5? Like each one of us give our 5th.
Each one.
Okay.
Do you want to start with 5 or start with 1?
I'd say start with 5.
That's fair.
Cool.
Number 5 for me, Miles Michaelis.
He wasn't on my list.
I put him on here for one reason. To make sure and ensure that your bullpen is not destroyed by the end of the season, you not only need him to give you quality innings, but innings. And I think you could say the same thing about Kyle Gibson, but Gibson's done a pretty good job of it. Michaelis overall has done good, but he's also had a couple of those games where it's been blow-ups. And if this second half is any indication of what Miles Michaelis has done in previous years, you're going to be talking about using your bullpen an awful lot for him on top of already using it a lot for Lance Lynn and Andre Palante. So I put Michaelis on this one.
I have a Nootbaar at 5. I think
did not make my list either.
I think Nootbaar's got to become that second left-handed bat that can become a presence in their lineup. So that's why he's 5 for me.
I had Paul Goldschmidt at number 5.
I have Goldie at 4.
I had Paul Goldschmidt at number 5 because I think he's the only right-handed bat outside of another that I have in my top 5 that can put up legitimate like 850-plus OPS in the second half. And the Cardinals really need that. So I have Goldie at number 5 on my list. You have him at 4, T-Bone?
Yeah, I have Goldie at 4.
I have Sonny Gray at number 4.
For the same reason, by the way.
Yep.
You have Sonny Gray at 4?
Yep. I have Sonny Gray at 4. The 3 guys in front of him, I believe, are more important if this team wants to have any success in the second half.
Wow.
He's important, but I
have Alec Burleson at 4.
I have Burley at 2.
Burley didn't make my list.
I think one of the underrated aspects of the Cardinals in the first half of the season, and one of the reasons why they've been able to be better than people expected, is because of the production that Burleson has provided, and not just the production, but the way that he's gone about it. He's a power hitter. He's a context hitter. He can hit basically anywhere in your lineup, and he's going to have success. He's a left-handed bat, which means that against 70% of the pitchers that he faces, he's got a platoon advantage in those spots. And the dude just rakes, and he's consistent, and he doesn't strike out, and he comes through with runners in scoring position. Like everything you need in a hitter, Burleson is providing it right now. And if that stops, if he has a down second half of the season, I don't know how they replace that profile of a hitter. I don't think they have any other left-handed bat that profiles the way that Alec Burleson does as a contact guy. They've got on-base players with Donnie and with Nootbaar. They've got a slugging guy with Nolan Gorman. They have nobody else that is the combination of contact and power that Alec Burleson provides. And that's really right or left-handed.
Yeah, and that's why I have him, and I'm skipping over my 3 for right now, but that's why I had Burley at 2. Like, the Cardinals cannot have his production go down. We did the game up or down. He cannot go down because they don't have another lefty that's going to fill his spot. And that's why I said Nootbaar's got to become number 2 for them. I had Sonny Gray at 3. I kind of agree with Alex on the sentiment of that. He's in the top 5, but I don't think he's won like he was at the beginning of the season, just because I don't care how good Sonny Gray is. The Cardinals, in my opinion, cannot win like they did in the first half here in the second half. Okay. The offense is what's going to have to really turn the corner, and that's why my top 5 is 4 offensive players.
Yep. 3 for me is Paul Goldschmidt. And then 2 is Nolan Arenado. And the reason that those 2 guys are 2 and 3 are because I'm expecting guys like Burleson, Mason Wynn to have a little bit of a drop-off. Because like we're talking about guys going on an unprecedented run in their first full season. If you don't have an uptick of Goldie and Arenado, you're probably going to miss out on the playoffs. If these guys get worse in the second half than what they were in the first, it doesn't matter what Burleson and Mason Wynn and Lars Nootbaar do. These guys are impactful for you to be a playoff team and go anywhere if you think you can.
I don't think they necessarily need Goldie and Arenado to hit to make the playoffs. I think they probably need one, and that's why I went with Goldie in my top 5, because I think
you need 3 big bats.
I've written off Arenado. I just don't think he's turning the corner this year.
I don't think he has the slug. Yeah. I think the slugging percentage is not coming around. I think he can be a good contact hitter. I think he could hit 290 plus in the second half. I could totally see a range of outcomes where that happens for him.
I think you need 3 big bats, and you know that Contreras is going to be there. And I'm expecting, and I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. It's just an unprecedented run of what Burleson and Wynn are doing in their first full season. I'm expecting a little bit of a drop off, and that means these 2 guys need to step up.
Number 3 for me is Ryan Helsley. Did you guys not have him on your list?
Ryan Helsley is number 1 for me. He's number 1.
I think the bullpen as a whole would rank higher, would be in the top 5. Just the 1 inning for Ryan Helsley. I don't value it as much. Even though it locks down the 9th inning for the Cardinals.
Yeah, dude. Imagine where this team would be if you had a major league average closer. Like, take Ryan Helsley out of that spot and put the Royals closer MacArthur into that spot.
You'd be the Cubs.
You're under 500. You're out of it. You're selling at the deadline.
Having multiple
flat out. You're
saves.
selling.
There's only one way this team wins, and it's locking it down in the 9th inning or a comeback victory. And that's why Helsley was number 1. If he breaks, or if he gets hurt, or if he's not the same guy, you're screwed.
So give me your list again.
So it's Ryan Helsley, it's Nolan Arenado, it's Paul Goldschmidt, it's Sonny Gray, and it's Miles Michaelis.
No Wilson Contreras?
No. Because I think Wilson Contreras is going to be this, and I think he's important. Yes,
you've got to have it though. You got to lock it in, and if he doesn't, I think this team is screwed.
But if Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado have the uptick, which they need to, then I think you offset that.
The reason I had Contreras and Burley 1, 2 on my list, Contreras 1, Burley 2.
So give me your full list.
My list is Contreras 1, Burley 2, Gray 3, Goldie 4, Nootbaar 5. The reason I have those 2 at 1 and 2 is you said the Cardinals don't make the playoffs if Goldie and Arenado don't hit. The Cardinals don't make the playoffs if Burley or Contreras regress. Period. Point blank. Period. If 3, 4 in their order don't hit, Goldie's
the same thing though. If they regress and my guys pick up, then you're talking about it.
I don't think your guys are. Like I think best case scenario, Goldie's 750 OPS. Arenado not going to pick it up. That's the case. 1 and 2 on my list. Burley and Contreras fall back at all. They're not a playoff team.
And I believe Burley will regress because, that was just an incredible run. And I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff. I just think it's
good while also not being what he was in the first half. I think
he's a complementary piece, and I think he will still be a complementary piece for you. You need impact bats, and that's where Goldie and Arenado come through.
Put this in context. Alec Burleson was almost 30% above league average offensively in the first half of the season. He could be like 15% above league average, which is roughly where like Brendan Donovan has been in his career. A good player and a really good hitter. And that's a significant regression from where he was in the first half. So that's not a like negative Nancy type of a take. It's just a realistic, hey, this guy could regress a little bit and still be a really good hitter, but not quite what he was in the first half. All right, my list. 1, Sonny Gray. I think you guys are wildly underestimating how important he is, at least for me.
He can't be impactful if he's only going 5 innings.
That guy is your only front-end starting pitcher, and everybody else is a 3 or below, like on a contending team. And if that dude is not as good or better than he was in the first half, this team will not make the playoffs. Number 2, Wilson Contreras. Number 3, Ryan Helsley. Number 4, Alec Burleson. And number 5 for me is Paul Goldschmidt.
And here's the reason I put 3 offensive guys in front of Sonny Gray. I agree. Sonny Gray is the most important pitcher on your team, with the exception of Ryan Helsley, because that's the only way you win. But like Mike Ferrin said, I don't think pitching is going to matter in the second half. I think it's all going to come down to your offense if they're good or not. And if they falter or get worse than what they were in the first half, Sonny Gray could be Cy Young in the second half, and you're still going to be talking about potentially losing games.
And the thing for me is, no matter how great Sonny Gray is in the second half, I don't think he impacts the record as a whole for the Cardinals making the playoffs as much as the offense does.
Brandon hates us on YouTube. This show is trash. They're going to the fast lane.
That's fair. All right, so speaking of the fast lane, once again, they're squaring off against the Rizzuto show, from 105.7 The Point at this year's Softball Home Run Derby, hosted by the O'Fallon Hoots, taking place next Saturday, July the 27th at CarShield Field in O'Fallon, Missouri. Rick Ankiel, Brian Jordan, and more Major League Baseball alumni will be there for the Fast Pitch Home Run Derby. I'm surprised they didn't ask T-Bone to be a part of that. GA tickets on sale right now for just $15. It's brought to you by Swiss Air Heating and Cooling, Faster House, and by Zwickle Light. Coming up next, we're going to hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
Thought it was a fun show today. If you're a Mizzou fan, we had the Missouri Athletic Director, Laird Veatch, on the show. We also had Mike Ferrin of MLB Network Radio. He talked to us about why Jack Flaherty might be the best option for the Cardinals at the deadline. He explained it. It's actually a well-thought-out idea, and we're going to explore that a little bit more on the show tomorrow. We played a game of Tinder Thursday, played some over-unders on what the Cardinals are going to do based on what they had in the first half production-wise to what they'll have in the second half. I thought it was a really good show today, so check that out on the podcast page if you are so inclined. You can hang out with Jamie Rivers, 101 ESPN, and Stella Artois this Thursday. Tonight, from 6 to 8 o'clock at Helen Fitzgerald, Stella is partnering with Hot Ones to bring hot wings and hot trivia questions. Do you watch Hot Ones, Alex?
I do. Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the best shows that
I
is
love
out
the
there
one
right
that
now.
they did with NSYNC. That was very enjoyable for me.
Man, I loved that show. If you want to sign up to play trivia, visit Helen's to find out how to register, or just come on out, hang out tonight. Watch the festivities tonight and enjoy some free Stella samplings and your chance to win attendance prizes. It's tonight, 6 to 8 o'clock with Jamie and Helen Fitzgerald. 101ESPN.com is where you can get more information. Alex, as you look back, final thing here, I would say the biggest topic today, Cardinals-wise, is does this team have a run in the second half the way that they have in 2019, 2021, and 2022? The recent good Cardinals teams that we have seen did it in the second half. Hell, even if you want to look at 2020, kind of had to go on a run there to be able to get in there as well with all the doubleheaders and whatnot, COVID-wise, that impacted the team. But that's a different situation entirely. Do you think this team has that in them?
I don't. I think they'll be very similar to what they were in the first half and the second half, which is still talking about potentially a 90-win team chasing the Milwaukee Brewers. But for them to do that, they need offense, and they need offense to be significantly better than what they were in the first half. And that comes down to Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, because you already saw the best of multiple guys. Now you need those two to come through.
Yeah, I don't think they can either go on a significant surge, because I just don't know if they've got the bats to do it. They're 2% below league average at the break. I think they're probably going to be about the same, because I don't think you see Goldie or Arenado really turn the corner after the All-Star break.
I think they've got it in them, boys.
Of course you do.
I think they're going to do it, and I think Jack Flaherty's going to be a part of it. We'll discuss that tomorrow. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fastlane's got you taken care of from 2 to 6 right here on 101 ESPN.